I would like to welcome everyone to the 18th annual DuPage Environmental Summit. My name is Brooke McDonald. I'm the president and CEO for the Conservation Foundation, and we're very excited that you're all joining us here this morning. I'm very excited about the topic and the individual speakers and what they're going to talk about. So I think we're going to have fun this morning and learn a lot. The topic this year, the DuPage Environmental Summit, the topic changes every year. And so this year it's Electrifying DuPage County. We're going to be talking about EVs. We're going to be talking about solar and all the different ways we can reduce our carbon footprint and help mitigate the negative impacts of climate change. We have three outcomes today. We want people, hopefully people will learn a lot and learn new things and see what kind of opportunities there are out there. Hope that you'll spread the word, sort of share the information that you learned today, share the recording link and some of the presentations that we'll provide to you, and also take action. Consider adding solar to your roof. If you're interested in buying a new EV, you're going to learn a lot today about that stuff. A little bit about the Conservation Foundation for those who may not be familiar. Conservation Foundation, we're a private not-for-profit organization. We've been around for more than 50 years. We celebrated our 50th anniversary last year. Our mission is to preserve and restore natural lands, clean up our rivers and streams, and promote stewardship of the environment. We've been involved in preserving about 35,000 acres of land over the last 50 years. And we work primarily in the Chicago region in general, but specifically in DuPage, Kane, Kendall, and Will counties. We do a little bit of work in Grundy, LaSalle, and DeKalb County as well. So we've been around a while. We have 40 employees. We have two office locations, one at the McDonald Farm here in Naperville and another one at our Dixon Merce Farm out near Montgomery. Yeah, we're a four-star rated organization through Charity Navigator, and we're accredited through the National Land Trust Accreditation Commission. So the Environmental Summit is just one of the things we do throughout the year to help promote stewardship of our environment. And again, we're excited to have you here today. Everybody should have been sent the agenda and some bios on each of the speakers. So I'm not going to go over that. You should have a copy of that. Also, just want to remind the speakers and everyone that we're going to try to maintain a pretty tight schedule here because we want to respect everybody's time and we want to end on time today. Just a reminder, there will be a short break at 10 o'clock. It'll last 10 minutes, and then at 10:10, we'll start our next presentation promptly. We're also recording this, and everybody that registered for the event will be getting an email next week, probably toward the end of next week, with a link to the video and also a link to some of the presentations that'll be on our website. And I believe the recording will also live on our YouTube page. And if you haven't been to our YouTube page, you might want to visit that. Last couple of years, we've produced a number of really cool webinar videos on a variety of environmental and conservation topics. So visit our YouTube page and you'll find a lot of other training sessions we've done over the past couple of years. A couple of people I want to thank here before we get started. I want to thank Joy Hins from DuPage County, and then Lisa and David Beckwith. Lisa and David are members and volunteers for the Conservation Foundation. They helped organize this event. So I want to thank the three of them for their help. Also, I want to introduce our A team, Abby, Allison, and Amy. They're going to be providing technical support today. They're all staff members with the Conservation Foundation. So thank you to the A team. Also, Allison will be monitoring questions and from the participants. So if you have a question, please type it in the Q&A and make sure you don't click on any links other than what we provide you. We may be able to provide you some information in the chat. Please avoid using the chat. If you have questions, put them in the Q&A, and then we'll use the chat if we want to share any information with you on that. And then finally, this is a free event. This has always been a free event, and it's been free because we have wonderful sponsors. So I want to give a shout out to the sponsors here. You see them on the screen, DuPage County and the Cool DuPage program, the DuPage Foundation, Christopher B. Burke Engineering, Itasca Bank and Trust Company, Bedrock Earthscapes, and of course the DuPage Foundation, who have been very supportive of us over the years. Also want to give a quick shout out, since we have a couple speakers from ComEd. Want to give ComEd a shout out. They've also been supporting our Mighty Acorns program here at the Conservation Foundation, which is our youth environmental education program for 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. So thank you, ComEd, for supporting that. Okay, so with that, I think I'm done with all of my introductory remarks. And we're very privileged to have Sheila Rutledge with us today. Sheila is on the DuPage County Board, and she chairs the DuPage County Board's Environmental Committee. And so, Sheila, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for your support. Love working with you guys. And we also have worked with the Stormwater Committee for many, many years. So, Sheila, I'm going to turn it over to you for some opening remarks.
Thank you, Brooke. And good morning, everybody. As Brooke said, my name is Sheila Rutledge, and I'm the chair of the DuPage County Environmental Committee. I'm excited to welcome you today. The topic this year is near and dear to my heart, as I've been a strong advocate at the county for electric vehicles and renewable energy. I wanted to share a few DuPage County statistics. In 2017, there were 1,371 vehicles registered with the Secretary of State. As of December 15th, 2022, there were 8,832 electric vehicles registered. That's more than a 6-fold increase in 5 years. So I think it's safe to say that electric vehicles are here to stay. Also exponentially growing in DuPage County and throughout the state are solar panel installations. The county has proudly partnered with the Midwest Renewable Energy Association, the Citizens Utility Board, and the surrounding counties on the Grow Solar Chicagoland Group Buy. In 2022, the program resulted in 75 installations, generating more than 5,500 kilowatts of new renewable energy capacity in the region. I'm told that this is enough energy to power an average Illinois home for over 76 years and will prevent the burning of more than 120 tons of coal each year. Adding to that impressive number, last year in unincorporated areas of the county, there were 132 solar permits, including mine, including one commercial project. This does not include any of the projects within the municipal jurisdiction. I'm also very pleased to tell you the county will be adding to this capacity as well. Later this year, the county will be installing a 125 kilowatt photovoltaic system on the administration building, thanks to a private donation, ComEd's incentives, and the state of Illinois' renewable energy credits. These are exciting times, and I'm proud to be part of this movement to a more sustainable future. Again, welcome, and I hope you're inspired by the summit today. Thank you.
Sheila, thank you very much. DuPage County has always been a leader on many things, conservation and sustainable, and so we appreciate all the leadership that DuPage County has provided over the years. Okay, I'd like to introduce Barb Sapiniak. She is with the DuPage Foundation, and the DuPage Foundation has been a huge supporter of many conservation efforts throughout DuPage County. Barb, thank you for joining us and for your support.
Thank you, Brooke. It's really wonderful to know that so many people are interested in environmental issues and attending today's summit. This is the 18th year the DuPage Foundation has supported the Environmental Summit, and we're proud to continue to do so because we know that valuable information comes from it. So a little bit about DuPage Foundation. Our mission is to foster philanthropy, connect donors to area needs, and build community partnerships. And basically what we do is we work with donors to help them accomplish their personal charitable goals. And then we also work with, we support local nonprofits through our grant making. And as DuPage County's philanthropic leader, we then diligently work to connect the donors to the organizations whose programs align with their interests. We have our signature Community Needs Grant Program, through which local nonprofit organizations can apply for grants in the areas of environment, education, health and human services, arts and culture, and animal welfare. And through this grant program, we have distributed more than $1.2 million in grants specifically for environmental programs here in DuPage. I have to say, I think today's clean energy topic is certainly timely. There has been more focus on solar energy in recent years, And we're seeing more and more electric vehicles on the road these days. And for many of us, it's generating a lot of questions. Recently, one of our foundation staff members purchased an electric vehicle after waiting almost a year to get it. And my coworkers and I have peppered her with questions because for us, this is pretty new. And actually, it's really fascinating. Where do you charge your car? Do you need a special outlet at your house? Is there enough infrastructure in place here in DuPage and other communities that you travel to? And how long does it take to charge your car? And how far can you go on one charge? I'm sure a lot of these questions will be answered during today's presentations. A healthy environment is important to the overall quality of life, which is why the foundation supports environmental programs through the Community Needs Grant Program that I mentioned earlier. If you are a 501c3 agency located in and benefiting DuPage residents, you may be eligible to apply. This year, applications for environmental programs are due September 1st, and details about this opportunity are available on our website at dupagefoundation.org. Finally, on behalf of the DuPage Foundation, I'd like to thank you all for all that you do to ensure a vibrant and healthy environment in DuPage. And actually, now that I hear there's people from all over, healthy environment everywhere. So thank you.
Barb, thank you. Appreciate it. Yeah, those are great questions. And I'm sure a lot of people here today have those same questions. Those were questions I have when I bought my Chevy Volt a few years ago. So I've learned a lot. A Chevy Volt is a plug-in hybrid, but I get those same questions from other people as well. So we're excited to just jump in. So Barb, thank you again. Sheila, thank you as well. And we're going to go right into our first presentation. I'd like to introduce Megha Lakhchaura. Megha is the first electric vehicle coordinator for the state of Illinois. She was appointed by Governor Pritzker, and sounds like the state of Illinois has a pretty audacious goal of having 1 million EVs on the road by 2030. So Megha, thank you for joining us today, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Hello. Hello. Well, nice to be here. And, as was pointed out, in July, I was appointed by the governor to meet the goal of, I wouldn't call it an audacious goal. I think it's very doable. 1 million vehicles by 2030. Just to put this into perspective, last year, the state grew by almost 57% in the number of electric vehicles we added. And that was without the state doing much. We do have some rebates, which I hope will follow with some of the question answers that we talk about, but the market and customers are asking for that. And as part of the job, I'm working on obviously looking at electrification for light duties, which is passenger vehicles, but also considering medium and heavy duty, looking at transit, and also, working on the charging infrastructure that we need across the state. So, as this is a Q&A session, I'll just hand it over to the moderator for the questions.
Okay, Lisa, you want to join us?
Megha, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
One of the statements that Governor Pritzker said was he was intending Illinois to be one of the best places in North America to drive and also manufacture an electric vehicle. So with that, I have also read that there is something called the REV Act, which Governor Pritzker is putting in to include credits on training, expenses for construction, building materials, and also producing batteries. So for those of us that are interested, that are from municipalities or maybe businesses joining us today, what kind of incentives are there for those folks to move to electric vehicles?
So this is something I don't deal with directly. We have the Department of Commerce and Education Opportunity that works on administering these incentives, but those are incentives that already exist, and we already announced one recipient of those, which is I believe it's TCI, which manufactures specific parts. So the way the law reads is that if you manufacture batteries or you manufacture specific EV parts or so, based on the number of jobs that you're creating and based on the annual revenue that's there, you get certain tax credits. And again, this is not something I'm an expert on. As I said, I work on infrastructure and getting the cars out there. The DCO is the best place to look for incentives. And if you want more information on that, I would just Google Rev Incentives Illinois, and it will take you to the page, and it will tell you directly what kind of incentives you are eligible for manufacturing in Illinois.
The other question that we have is, people have read about a $4,000 credit that was in place for people that purchase EVs. Can you explain a little bit about the credits?
So it was a $4,000 rebate that you could get, and this is a rebate that is administered by EPA. So when CEJA passed, CEJA was the groundbreaking law, which has been instrumental in a lot of these initiatives for clean energy. It said that the state would administer a $4,000 rebate for the purchase of an electric vehicle in the state, in Illinois. It could be used or it could be new, but the date had to be after July 1, 2022. Since then, we've had 2 rounds of the rebate. The first round closed, I believe, somewhere in November, and we awarded almost 2,200 rebates, of which close to 157 were for low-income residents of the state. And the way this rebate is designed is that we will always prioritize low-income applicants. And then if we still have money, then we just, release it to, the other applicants who are out there. But we had 2,200 rebates were awarded, of which about 150 were low income, because, as long as a low income applicant was eligible, we allowed them to, those are the kind of applications we prioritize. After that, we started a second round, and it is subscribed at the moment. So we almost had $17 million for this program. And at this point of time, it's spent. And you could go and look at the website, but the rebate, but we have received more applications than the money that we have at this point of time. So that's where we are on the state status of those rebates.
Are the rebates also to incentivize municipalities and businesses? For example, I know that Pace Bus has one electric bus that they are using from 2022. And they've ordered 20 more in 2023. Are there incentives for our municipalities, our park districts, et cetera, to start going into heavy vehicles?
So currently, no, but the Volkswagen settlement clearly said that, the governor put out a press release, which came out in May, that we have about $84 million left of the Volkswagen settlement. So $27 million is going to go towards electric school buses, $27 million towards transit, and another, I believe, is it 16 or $14 million is for other heavy duty trucks. So those amounts have been apportioned, but the programs have not, the notice for funding opportunities have not been launched yet. So this year you can expect that EPA will be launching various rounds of funding for transit buses, one for electric school buses, and third, for those heavy duty trucks that are covered under the Volkswagen settlement. So while nothing exists at the moment, stuff exists. And yes, I have been in conversations with both CTA and PACE, and we have been talking about what their electrification goals are and what kind of infrastructure they require. So they are looped into not just the bus part of the discussion, but how do we get the charging infrastructure in place as we, electrify more of these buses?
I have a question on charging. You mentioned a little bit about it. Could you elaborate more? Like, are you doing direction of it? Are you making recommendations? Are there monies that are involved?
So when I took the job, which started somewhere in July, the state already had 3 pots of money that it could look at towards building charging infrastructure in the state. And we don't have many chargers in the state. Like, I believe it's close to 204 fast charging ports. And that's not enough to keep up with, what the current number of electric vehicles are, let alone what we're going to see in the future. Also, most of these are, in Chicago and Chicagoland, and don't really, and you don't see too many chargers.
Megha, your mute for some reason popped on.
Okay.
No, you're good now. You're good.
So I just think that, what has happened is that we have three pots of money to work with when I took the job. So we're getting about $146 million from the federal government to build out our corridors. So the Illinois Department of Transportation is working on a number of procurement or whatsoever to build out these designated corridors to put chargers every 50 miles so that people can crisscross the strait, quite efficiently and easily, and charge as they, and that would be a significant point of reducing range anxiety, because when you drive, if I'm on the expressway and there's a charger every 50 minutes, you're fine. So that's one thing. The other thing we have is another $70 million that came from EPA grants, and we are designing programs as we move forward. So we're still going through some legislative process, so I can't talk much about it, but we will be releasing that money in tranches and kind of addressing individual needs of the state. Like, they'll be more specific. The third thing that we've already put out is we've already put out a notice for funding opportunity for grants for $12.4 million of fast charging in the Volkswagen round. Now that just closed in December. And although the amount of the program was $12.4 million, we got applications over $30 million. So there's a lot of enthusiasm in the state with vendors to build out the charging. And this was a great indication, because as we launch more money, we know that people want to go out there and build these chargers. So our objective is, one, use the federal money to build out the corridors. Number two, use the Volkswagen money that we have, which we can only use in 3 priority areas. I believe DuPage is one of them. I'm not sure, but I'll have to check. But to build out fast charging in areas like gas pumps or retail destinations or any kind of a destination center. Like those are the kind of needs that money could take care of. And then finally, we have the EPA funds, which are 70 million. And then that will be, uniquely targeting very unique charging needs. For example, it could be for municipalities. I'm not saying the program is launched yet, but that is one way of looking at it. It could be, again, in counties that are outside of Chicago. As we go through the program, we have to think through it. So we'll look at areas that are more underserved and try to, help and, see how we can get more chargers out there.
When it comes to a follow-up question on that, when it comes to the equity involved with this, it seems like places like apartments don't have level 2, and it seems like that's going to take a while before that happens. Is there anything that you're doing to address that issue?
So with respect to equity, I'd like to say that we prioritize environmental justice areas. I mean, for any of the applications that are going through, that's the one thing. If you're in an EJ community, we will prioritize you. But in terms of our EV rebates, we prioritize low income. We said we're not going to give out a single rebate until we've exhausted all low income applications. However, what you're referring to is the multi-unit dwellings and condos and apartments, which are a very difficult to serve sector because, and I think part of that in the future, one of the solutions is that, it's pretty much like Chicago, like it's rooted in some kind of a building code, is that if you build a certain number of condos, the developer should also provide charging infrastructure for at least 20 to 30% of, all the possible spaces, or even more, depending on, what you deem one. But that's for new buildings. I think it's really tricky when we go to older buildings and we go and, try to find the electric work, the conduit work is incredibly expensive when we go to these old buildings and, try to upgrade them. So that is a sector that needs specific focus. Right now, we don't have any pot of money that focuses on that for a simple reason that for all of the EPA or Volkswagen, we've said that the charging should be available 24 hours, 24/7 and to everyone, like it's public charging. And I think that's the first sector we decided to invest in, is how to solve the public charging program, because we have so few public chargers out there. The next one, as and when, we can work with utilities, we can work with different sources of funds, but we have to, and it's right there on my mind that we do have to find the multi-unit dwelling solution. But based on the 3 pots of money that we talked about right now, we don't have anything that we could potentially do for those at the moment. But, again, this is something that, we have to identify more money for, think how to go through. And we're having active discussions at the governor's office as to how to address this issue.
And one possible one right up front is just give some sort of financial incentive for a landlord, some rebate on putting an infrastructure in.
Yes, and several states do that. Like, they do that in Colorado, and sometimes it is to the landlord, and then they can ask the tenant to either bring their own charger, or you give a charging rebate. There's a lot of existing programs that exist. California, Colorado. I've worked on them in my previous life before I took this job in Illinois. So I'm aware, and those are the type of programs I'd love to replicate over here. But things are a little different here, and it's also recognizing that the budgets are also very different in those states. So again, it's top of mind. We're looking for money. We're looking for ways to help landlords to do this, and I know how incredibly expensive and non-viable and unviable it is. Like if you're just trenching and digging up something that's already existing out there to put in chargers. But that doesn't mean that we won't do it. It's just figuring out how to get the money to do it.
We have some excellent questions from the participants. Allison, you want to facilitate those?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thanks for everybody's questions here. We have a few clarifying questions. Can you give a little bit more information about what is the Volkswagen Fund, and what do you mean by public charging? Is that free, available to all? What do those two terms mean?
So the Volkswagen Fund was a settlement that the entire nation, various states had with Volkswagen because of the cheating scandal. They lied on the type of emissions they were giving off, and they gave states money to build up charging infrastructure or replace their electric vehicles. So as part of that settlement, Illinois got a certain amount of money, and right now we have $84 million of that money left. And that's the allocation I was talking about, is that, 27 million is going to go towards transit, 27 million is going to go towards electric school buses, and another 12.7 million is going to go towards charging, and another $16 million is going to go towards like other heavy medium duty trucks. This is a pot of money that we got from that. And what was the second question? What was the second clarification?
When you talk about having public charging, what exactly does that mean? Is that free and open to everyone?
Yes, that's exactly. It's like, when you go to the gas station and you have that gas knob, that nozzle available to you 24/7 into 365. That's what I mean by public charging. So charging can be anywhere. Like, we just talked about multi-unit dwellings. If it was in a condo, then obviously, people who are not residents cannot use that. Similarly, if it's at a workplace, then people who are not part of that office cannot use that. So our with the amount of funding that we had, we said we are going to prioritize this money, at least the first round that we have. We will spend it on public charging to make sure that everybody can avail of the infrastructure dollars that we're putting in here. So a good example could be having a charger, say a 7-Eleven could be a good example, or if you go to a Starbucks and it's out there, or you go to a Walgreens, a Walmart, or say a Target, like, all those retail locations, not in the garage, but something outside is something you could access. Similarly, something at a gas station, right? Like, of course you have those nozzles, but you could also have a fast charger out there. And the idea is that you should be able to, everybody, like, it shouldn't, the access should not be limited in any way, shape, or form.
Great. And there's a question here about, like, in the long term, do you expect that most chargers will be at existing gas stations moving forward? And someone who splits their time between two states that are far apart is asking, how long does it actually take to recharge?
So the first question, again, these are two questions, and I'll forget the second one. The first one was what? It was,
Do you expect that all gas stations will have chargers in the future?
so the good news is that a lot of these gas station companies have invested in charging companies. For example, Shell Recharge is owned by Shell. BP Pulse is owned by BP. So, I just see that, like, since they've already made those investments, I think for them a very low hanging fruit is to just put those chargers in, a lot of those in some of their charging stations. At least, as the third party owner of the charging station, create some incentives, do whatever to make sure that they also include charging into all of that. And also the number of electric cars are growing, and as that keeps going on, what's going to happen is the consumption of gas is going to go down. So what are gas owners going to do? What are gas station owners going to do? They're going to have to do something to keep the customer, and moving to electric is definitely one thing I see. Do I see them only at gas stations? No, I think that there will be at retail locations. When you go shopping, for 5, 6, 2, 3 hours, you should have the ability to charge your car. If you're going to go watch a movie, you should have, and you're parked in a parking garage, you should have the ability to charge your car. If you go to work, at workplace where you're spending 7, 8 hours, you should have the ability to charge your car. So I see chargers coming up everywhere, not just in specific locations, but anywhere people just go and park and leave their cars is a potential solution for putting in a charger. And then the second question was, how long does it take? So it depends on the type of charger, on the level of power of the charger. It also depends on the car, because some cars can charge fast and some cannot. So if I used a very fast charger at this moment, I could charge a car at 20 minutes to 15 to 30 minutes is something I could completely recharge my car with if I had the right car and I had a very fast charger. But you could also have these level 2 chargers, which take 6 to 8 hours to charge your car, which are great at your home and which are also great at workplace, because that's where you're going to leave your car for extended hours. So again, it depends on the use case. It depends on how long the car is going to stay there. It depends on the power of the charger. And that helps determine how long it takes. But for corridors, or when you're going on the expressway, obviously you want chargers that can go really fast. And when we talk about, I mentioned we'll be building out charging on the corridors. We'll be putting in chargers that are greater than 150 kilowatts. So you should be able to charge your car between 15 to 30 minutes. That's what we'll be doing for the corridors.
Great. And there's a lot of wonderful questions in here. And for folks who you may not hear your question answered here, I will let you know in our final session, a lot of these questions are going to be covered. So I'm going to prioritize ones that are specific to Megha's expertise here. Can you talk a little bit about when we're talking about funding and incentives, when is the best time to purchase an EV in terms of the incentives and charging infrastructure, and how do folks think through when's the right time to go, given that it's sort of a transition at this point to more of an EV infrastructure and incentives?
So, I think when is a good time? I think it's hard to put on a date. I think every day is a good time at this point of time, because what has happened is that prices are going down, and then there is no Illinois incentive at this point of time, because we spent it. It's like between July and December, but there are some good tax credits out there which came through the Inflation Reduction Act, in which you can get up to $7,500 of tax credit if you buy an electric vehicle. Started last year, but in January it's really kicked in. And the cost of the car has to be less than $55,000 for light duty, and I think it's $80,000 for SUV. So you have those, but of course it's capped by income. So you have to be income qualified, like an annual gross income cap exists. for you to have the ability to take advantage of that. So that's one thing you could look at. I think the other issue with buying it is also looking at the price of gas. If you drive quite a lot, and it's maybe cheaper, even if the upfront cost is a little higher to get the car. And then obviously you don't have to take it for maintenance for at least for the first 150,000 miles. So over the cost of the car, you save money. So when is the best time to buy it? Like if you need to buy a car, I'd say today, as long as you can get it, because we know that supply chain has been an issue or so.
Great. And we have a question about what was the state's logic in terms of charging for EV license plates, knowing that I think it's a different fee than the regular ones. Could you speak a little bit to that?
I can't. I don't know what the logic was. I mean, I know that the idea is that gas taxes, because EVs don't pay gas tax, you don't have, it's not the kind of money that you collect or so. Like there is a revenue deficit that exists. If everybody went electric and we had no gas tax, then we'd have no money to maintain our state's roads and bridges and so on and so forth, because that's where that money goes. So it was done to do. I mean, that is why you pay a higher license fee for that. Beyond that, I don't know how they came up with the exact number, or is that the perfect solution to make up for that? What kind of analysis happened or so? That was really before my time.
Great. Thank you for your honesty there. We have a few questions about how decisions are made about where to put the infrastructure for EVs. And could you speak a little bit more about how you will decide where the public charging stations will be located? And if there's any programs that assist small businesses or women-owned businesses, veteran-owned, that want to install chargers at their businesses.
So the first question was, the second one was about DB women groups. The first one was, how do you
decide where the infrastructure goes?
So we have a current grant program that we have out there. And since it was Volkswagen, and since it was part of the settlement that I earlier referred to, you had to be in certain counties to qualify for that. So the location of the county was kind of limited by the nature of the settlement. Now, how do we decide? So we ask for grant applications. We ask people to come in and tell us where they want to install. And they have to show in the application, we say, how close are you to traffic? Are you close to another charger? Are you any retail or whatsoever around it? We do ask those questions, but this is a question that the market knows better than we do in the government, because they have, at the end of the day, they want people to come to their charger, and they want folks to use it as much as possible. They want what we call utilization. Like the more you use the charger, the better off they are. So they already have planners in their midst who look at everything from population density to number of electric vehicles over there, et cetera, et cetera. So they know the best locations of where to put the chargers, and we know they're covered. As a state, we're more concerned about the less lucrative locations, right? Like where people don't want to go. So we prioritize environmental justice areas, like as I said, if you get an application and you have one over there. But as we go ahead in this program, we are going to see where we're not getting chargers based on where the market is going, and we are going to target some programs in those maybe counties or areas. But we're not going to get very specific, like, oh, you must put this at this retail or near this highway or whatsoever, because that's something that the market can and will and should figure out or so. So while we keep a check on it and we look out for underserved communities, we're not going to be prescriptive to the point of where we pinpoint exactly the block of where you should put your charger. And the second one is women and disadvantaged communities. So for all our procurement that we're going to put out, there is we do favor disadvantaged business enterprises. It's part of all the procurement that happens in the state, be it the Department of Transportation, be it EPA, any of these grants where vendors fall in these categories are ones that are prioritized. And there are also special outreach efforts, as far as I understand, that are made to reach out to these groups when these solicitations come out.
Great, thank you so much. We've had a few
Couple more
questions.
minutes.
Yeah, so as we wrap up here, there's a question about if you're at a public charging site, do drivers have to pay anything? And secondly, there's a question about what are some of the electrical costs? Because even if, you know, a driver doesn't pay anything, obviously the electricity costs something. So could you speak a little bit around how the costs are handled?
So in almost all of so you will have to, so it depends on several factors. That's a complicated question, but yes, in most cases you will pay, especially if it's a fast charger or so, you will pay. Now there are companies like Volta which have a different business model where you don't pay for charging, but you watch an advertisement or something on the screen, and you know, you watch that commercial, and then you get to charge your car. So that's a business model question, and in many cases they don't have those screens and they just want you to pay. There is some free charging available, you know, in certain locations. It could be mostly because someone decides that all right, this is a good this might be a good way to retain customers. So it's a merchant's decision if they want to put some free charging because it gives them an edge over other businesses or so. But that would mostly be for like slower charging, because, you know, as the second part of the question points out, the cost of electricity to provide charging can be very high, especially if it's fast charging, and especially the way certain of these rates are structured. Like if you had a big car come in and charge really fast, you might get a big bill for that. So they have to recover it. That's where that comes from. However, it's slower charging and, you know, you don't have too many chargers there all the time. You know, you could have a case where you provide charging as an amenity as against charging for it. But again, it really depends on the business model and, you know, what's out there. And that's what it is or so.
Great. So if your questions weren't answered here, I'm just going to let you know we're bumping a few of them to our final session of the day, as they also will be speaking to some of these issues. And so as we wrap up here, Megha, is there anything else that you'd like to let folks know in terms of your role and where things are going as we move on to the next speaker?
Well, you know, as I said, the role, I think like things are going well in Illinois. As I said, we had a 57% increase in the number of EVs in, you know, a single year, in a year that was constrained by supply chain and, you know, non-availability of issues. So I think that's going in the right direction. I think we're also working pretty hard, and I think we're working in the right direction on getting the charging infrastructure out there to support the cars. I think the next thing that I want to work on, and is something that I have less answers for at this point of time, is medium heavy duty electrification. How do we get the trucks to electrify? And you know, what do we need? What does it take? So those are the type of discussions, you know, that's the problem I want to solve for. And, you know, happy to talk to anybody who has some good ideas that we can implement. That's all I have to say.
Megha, thank you so much. You answered those questions well. There's obviously a lot more questions, and hopefully some of these questions will get answered in some of the subsequent presentations and at the end. So Megha, thank you so much for joining us today. Good luck, and we appreciate all the work you're doing.
Thank you so much, Brooke. Thank you.
Okay, great. So we're right on time here, and I'm going to go to our next speaker, talking about ComEd's EV Toolkit. So I want to introduce Ken Amin. He leads the strategic programs team with ComEd. So Ken, go ahead and take it away.
Great. Good morning, everyone. I'm really excited to be with you all today to talk about such an important topic. You know, in my role as the manager of the strategic programs team within ComEd Customer Solutions, I have the privilege of leading the development of the company's customer-facing EV strategy and work on delivering educational tools and resources to really help customers like you make informed decisions so you get the most value out of your EV purchase. Now, ComEd powers the lives of about 9 million customers in Northern Illinois. And really across the company and at all levels, we're really focused on preparing our customers for a clean energy future and really helping our communities work towards the goals of the Climate and Equity Jobs Act, which includes, as you heard, a target of adding 1 million EVs to Illinois roads by 2030. Why is this goal important? And it's really because transportation is the leading cause of carbon pollution today. And electrifying transportation, which includes cars and public transit, and really eliminating the emissions from those, is really critical to lowering our collective carbon footprint, while also creating like tangible health benefits locally in terms of better air quality and the health improvements that come with that. So in addition to and the environmental benefits, there are cost savings for you associated with switching to an electric vehicle as well, in terms of fuel costs, and as mentioned previously, lower maintenance costs. So just want to confirm, you guys can see my the presentation screen?
Yes, you're good.
Okay, so yeah, let's just jump in and see if we can help you navigate your EV journey and figure out if an EV is right for you. So when it comes to electric vehicles, we know there's a lot to research and a lot to learn about, because it's different than what we're accustomed to in terms of, we're used to shopping for a gas vehicle. And so there are different considerations and questions that we as customers need answers for in order to make an EV a viable option for you when you buy your next car. So as a result of this, we conducted quite a bit of research with customers like you to really better understand what their experiences was like at each stage of the journey, meaning from like the moment they first started seeing EVs on the road, to piquing their interest, researching online, making the decision that, yeah, this really could be right for me, to the experience they feel when they visit the dealerships. They actually make a purchase, they get an EV at home, now what? They start to think about, potentially upgrading to faster charging at home, or driving that EV around town and getting that experience with public charging, to even considering what rate should it be on with the utility. So we created this EV toolkit to really help address some of the pain points that were identified in the research. And so, like it says here on the slide, we want to help our customers no matter where they are in their journey, whether if they're just interested in an EV and just starting out on their research, or if they already own one. We have the information that can help make your EV related decisions more informed. So now if you go to our homepage, you'll see a series of tiles like this, and this set of tiles is really help if you're just starting to learn about EVs and really want to see if it's right for you. Going from left to right, the savings, benefits, and incentives tab here, the tile. Here you'll be able to kind of learn the basics about EVs, learn about all electric EVs, hybrids, plug-in hybrids, learn about the different types of charging, level 1, level 2, level 3. We have an FAQ section in there. And really, one of the most important things that we offer, from a tool perspective, is a fuel cost savings calculator, which we'll touch on in a little bit. And then also, what was alluded to earlier, we also have a page on our site that lists out what are the EV-related incentives that are currently out there, whether it's federal tax credits, or we have links to those informations from our site, or rebates on EV purchases or chargers. In addition to that, the other cool tool that we have is that we with our Find Vehicles and Chargers feature, as customers, you're able to quickly review the latest EV brands, the models and charger options that are available in the market, and to see which ones may be right for you. And then similarly, there's a lot of question about range. You can use our search for public charging feature if you want to get a sense of where you could charge besides your home or office to help with your decision making. So we're going to walk through the toolkit in a little bit more detail and kind of just keep walking through. So, moving on to slide 4, one of the key points is that our research showed that customers really want to know, how much can I personally save in fuel costs by switching from a gas vehicle to an electric vehicle? Well, this fuel cost savings calculator can provide you with a personalized estimate. And it's easily one of our most popular or most frequented sites. And so while there's other estimates on fuel cost savings online that you can research, there's really nothing like this one that is really customized for you. And just to kind of give you a quick sense of this, if you look at the slide here, it asks, how far does a gallon of gas drive your car? So you can enter in the local price of gas near you. And in this example, we use $4.35. You can enter in the make, model, and year of the gas vehicle that you currently own. You can enter in the make, model, and year of the EV that you're interested in purchasing. And then you enter in the ComEd rate that you're on, whether you're on the fixed price or if you happen to be on the hourly pricing rate, you can choose that. If you happen to take electric service from an alternative supplier, you can enter your electric rate, your cost per kilowatt over here. And then basically what this is telling you is that for $4.35, I can go 203 miles further on the EV than I can with my gas vehicle. So in this case, a Honda Accord gives me 24 miles per gallon, whereas for the same cost, $4.35, I can go 227 miles on the EV that I chose. Now, in addition, if I drive, say, 15,000 miles per year, I'm saving $2,400 annually in fuel costs. And so this is customizable as well. So this is a really valuable tool, for you and your individual situation and the vehicle that you currently have and the EV that you're interested in purchasing. Moving on to the next slide, slide 5. You can use your find an EV or find your vehicle and charger page here. While there's other sites that you can go to, like Edmunds and things, to see, hey, here, what are the available EVs by brand and thing. What our site offers is it's a little bit more customized and gives you a quick snippet. So let's just hypothetically say I'm looking for, and there's actually a checkbox here for 2023. But you can kind of say that, for me personally, price is my #1 priority. And I'll say the longest range is my second priority. And if I simply click that, the list of EVs will populate according to my needs. And then as I scroll through the list of EVs, I can quickly see what the range is on the vehicle, if there's a federal tax credit that's available, and roughly what's the estimated starting price. So really quickly, it kind of narrows down the field of which vehicles may be right for me. Moving on to the next slide, similar to the prior page, from our research, we learned that customers have a lot of questions with regards to charging. If they want to upgrade to faster charging, what are the available chargers? What are the brands that are out there? And so this page helps identify the level 2 chargers that are available in the market. If you want to install faster charging in your home, you can kind of browse through the directory here. And so we have a list of level 2 chargers here. Some are Wi-Fi enabled and some are not. And so the recommendation would be to consider getting the smart level 2 charger. Because then you'll be able to, like, if you do take advantage of, say, hourly pricing as an example, you can come home, you can plug in that EV charger, but then, with a smart charger, you can kind of time when the charging will actually take place. And with rates, with hourly pricing, the rates in the overnight hours are typically lower than rates during the day, when usage is high and as an example, in summertime, everyone's running their air conditioning. So there's an opportunity to save some money potentially. One of the things that I'll just quickly point out here is that, we intend this EV toolkit to be kind of like a one-stop shop, where, so you can come to our site, you can learn about EVs, available incentives, the EVs that are out there, as well as the chargers. If you want to upgrade to an EV charger, you'll notice on our page that some of our chargers, not all of them, have like a purchase button. And if you click through that button, it'll take you to the ComEd marketplace where you can actually purchase a charger. So we try to make the customer experience and the journey a little bit simpler. So it gives you, if you're starting out, a variety of information that you can feel free and kind of peruse through. One thing with installing a charger that I'll say is that, also on our website, we do have a checklist, like, is your home ready for an EV? And one of the key things to kind of point out there is that you want to make sure that you consult with a licensed electrician to really see, if your home, what upgrades your home may need in order to support a level 2 charger. And so typically for a level 2 charger, this requires a 240 volt circuit to the, if you have a single family home with an attached garage, you may need a 240 volt outlet in your garage. And so it means having an electrician add a circuit from the panel board to your garage. And that's where costs can vary. Typically on the site, level 2 chargers range anywhere from $600 to $700 for the ones that are the most common. So I'll keep going here. I know there's a lot of information. We talked about, finding a public charger near you. Again, in an effort to kind of have like a one-stop shop. There are other tools out there available that you can use to identify and locate public charging. We happen to have one on our site just as well. And so you can find chargers in 2 ways on our site. You can simply enter in the zip code, whether it near your home or near your work, or even if you're taking a road trip and you may not know what your zip code is, you can simply kind of zoom out of the map. And what you'll find is the blue dots here indicate the locations of those charging stations, what type of charger it is, if it's a level 1, a level 2, and then depending on the vehicle, what type of connector that you have. And then it'll give you a high level as to, the name of the public charging location, the address, a phone number, and the types of support that it offers. So I know I'm going through really quickly, but the toolkit is designed to be self-service, and it's very easy to use. So just continuing on with this, what if you already own an EV? Well, there's information for you there as well. I alluded to having that EV charger readiness checklist, which you can access from the tile on our homepage. We also have a page for finding the right rate for you. I mentioned earlier that most ComEd customers will default to a fixed price. But if they're interested, if they own an EV and they primarily charge in the overnight hours, they may want to explore the hourly charging rate and hourly pricing rate. And so we recommend using the fuel cost savings calculator, and then also calling our hourly pricing specialist. And so there's a phone number that you can access through there to kind of really look at your unique situation to kind of talk through there. And then last but not least, we encourage our customers to register your EVs with ComEd. This certainly isn't mandatory, but this allows ComEd to monitor electricity usage in your region in order to maintain, safe and really national leading reliability in terms of the electric service that we provide you and your neighbors. So, and then, I'll wrap up here by saying, we're really excited to offer this personalized toolkit to support our customers with the information and resources they need. to make informed EV-related decisions. You know, helping customers access clean energy and manage their energy usage for savings and for our planet is really central for ComEd. And it's really the core of what our customer solutions team focuses in on day in and day out. So appreciate the opportunity to share this information with you.
Ken, thank you so much. Good job. And we're not going to be able to have any time to answer any questions specifically to this. But again, a lot of the questions that are in the Q&A will be answered in some of the other sessions. So Ken, thank you very much, and hope you can stick around and maybe answer some questions later. So thank you very much. We appreciate ComEd's support also again for our Mighty Acorns program. So thank you. Okay, we're going to go on to the next speaker. Brian Bennett is the fleet manager for the city of Des Moines, Iowa. This is an advantage of doing virtual presentations. We can bring people in from different parts of the country. What they're doing there in Des Moines, Iowa is pretty impressive. So Brian, thank you for joining us, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Brian.
Brooke, thank you so much. Can you see the screen okay?
Ken, you'll probably have to unshare real quick. Can you unshare?
Yeah, I'm not
There
able
you go. Okay, go ahead, Brian. Go ahead and share your screen now.
Is it coming through now, Brooke?
I don't see it, Brian.
Okay. Sorry, let me.
There you go. I think you're heading in the right direction. Okay, go ahead and put it on presentation mode, and there you go. All you. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Ken, thanks so much for your previous presentation of Toolkit. I kind of wish I'd had that guide as fleet manager for City of Des Moines. We started our journey or down our path of EVs. Quick thank you to the Conservation Foundation. I appreciate the invitation today, and thank you for all the attendees. The last time I looked at the box, I think 244 of you were, so I appreciate you devoting time to this topic today. Very humbled to be part of this. We're early on as a municipality. We're very early on our journey to EVs. Full disclosure, personal level, I do not own an EV yet. I hope for that to be my retirement vehicle, which hopefully there's a retirement for me from City of Des Moines in the near future. However, though, I have purchased various rechargeable power tools for my spouse to use in and about our acreage. So we're very proud owners of several pieces of steel rechargeable power tools. So that's the full disclosure on the personal side. Foundation invited me to kind of share the Des Moines story. So it is a bit of a case study of what we've been able to do so far here in Des Moines in implementing EVs into the fleet. That's really driven, one of the source drivers of where we're at today comes from the city's climate action plan, which our marketing folks have labeled that ADAPT DSM, ADAPT to a climate action plan for the city of Des Moines. Has some realistic goals of 28% reduction in emissions from the 2008 level. We're rapidly approaching 2030 goal of 45% reduction. The 2035 is going to be difficult to attain. That's the goal of 100% 24/7 carbon-free electricity citywide. And that really comes from upstream, not so much of what we would do in fleet services specifically. And then the ultimate goal, as you can see, in 2050, net zero greenhouse gas emissions. So that climate action plan and goals established by our elected council really was one of the drivers to it. So this is not a picture of me. I'm off camera today, but during our 5-year venture into EVs, I've really felt like this depiction. A lot of the times as we initiated implementing EVs into a city municipal fleet, it really was juggling balls, and sometimes those balls were on fire with sandburst stickers in them. So it has been a little bit of a path for me. So I do appreciate sharing it today. And I pledge that this will be the only intended pun today of jump-starting the use of EVs. Got three major areas that I'll cover in the allotted time of how did we start down the path, how did we jumpstart into EVs. I can speak specifically to municipal funding and purchase. I would like to be clear here. I'm sure hopefully we have some governments and municipal or tax exempt entities on, but there's, from the basis of some questions, a lot of individuals. So really what I'm sharing today is very specific to municipal or government implementation. So there may be a little alternative funding and purchasing as opposed to individual buyers. And I'll conclude with really our implementation and the specific use that we've found successful for EVs. And I'll also share some of the stories where we could have made some improvements. So with that, I'll cover these, a little background to give you an idea of where we were coming from. The current fleet, non-electric fleet in City of Des Moines, I'm very honored to lead a group of 36 men and women in fleet services. We are a division of the finance department, a little bit different municipal model than a lot of city governments, but it works well for us. I have easy access to budget analysts and financial folks. 726 vehicles, as you see, those are cars, SUVs, pickups, some motorcycles, specialty, and that also include vehicles in our medium and heavy duty trucks. Also, we also are responsible for acquisition, repair, maintenance, and ultimate disposal of various miscellaneous pieces of equipment, including off-road construction equipment. So it's a diverse municipal fleet, appropriately sized for the services that we provide our residences. Another driver of venturing down the path of EVs was our liquid fuel consumptions. We consume 400,000 gallons of an E10 gasohol in our unleaded fleet, over 400,000 gallons of diesel, and we've also introduced B100 products. So we're a huge consumer of liquid fuels. We do achieve some reduced greenhouse gases by using a B100 product in our heavy duty products, heavy duty trucks. So big user of liquid fuels. Our current fleet strategies, we've by way of experience of EVs, we want to electrify replacement vehicles and any additional vehicles that come into the fleet that where a sedan or a car, a van, an SUV, or half-ton pickups are a suitable application. Clearly, the market availability of additional types, if we get into medium duty or what I call work trucks or heavy duty trucks, that market availability will kind of dictate that timeline. I know it's not the topic today, but we will also continue and increase the use of B100 liquid fuels through dual fuel technology. We now have a pilot tested program of heavy duty trucks that uses conventional fossil diesel, if you will, along with B100 renewable. So we'll also continue that path. Kind of the last background slide. These are the specific applications of our existing fleet. We've identified certainly anything that's a sedan or a car here. We're currently 54 units. Those are very viable potential for replacement with EVs. We acquire and maintain and repair the public safety fleet, except for fire. All of police, it's a huge department for us, as you might imagine. So we obviously do not have any pursuit rated EVs in the fleet at this time. We continue to market that availability. And you can see SUVs, vans, and pickup trucks, specifically a half-ton pickup truck, difficult to come by. And so we will continue to monitor that. We think there's some availability coming in this model year 2023, 2024, especially Ford Lightning in a half-ton and potentially other brands. I do have a single heavy-duty refuse truck, all EV on order to be delivered yet this year. So we are testing one on the heavy-duty side. So there's a quick look at the existing fleet, and now really, onto the good stuff. It's why you're here today. We started our path to EVs in 2018, precipitated by that climate plan. Also, there was a change in our elected council leadership. Fortunately, there's some additional environmental stewards elected to council positions. So we had support of our elected body to move to EVs. And they really authorized that climate action plan. We conducted a series of, they were public meetings, a full council. There were non-voting meetings. We conducted a series of those for public input. Got great positive public input. It's always, and as many of you that work with elected councils, it's always interesting to see the interaction among the various factions, even in an elected body. So we had to do some convincing of some council persons that were concerned about, as probably all of us on the webinar today are aware of, the incremental increase in cost of electric. How do you charge it? How long will it run? Some of the concerns here in central Iowa, will it go in ice and snow? So that was our first task, was to have full council support. And I have that now. It's 7-member voting board. And when we take EV action items to council, we get unanimous support. One quick call out to the Electrification Coalition. Appreciate their support. I use them extensively through our path as technical support. So again, that's just a nonprofit coalition that really rounds up a lot of information about EVs. The last thing that we did on the public thing is I was able to participate in taxpayer group presentations. Interesting meetings. Both factions of pro-EV and maybe not so much pro-EV came out in those meetings. So again, another opportunity for public input and to share information in a public manner. So this really laid the groundwork for kind of the next phase here of how do we fund, how have funded and purchased our EVs. Again, this comes kind of with the caveat, if you will, that this is very specific to municipal and government or tax exempt entities. And so they may not apply, most likely would not apply to individual purchases. At the time that we wanted to introduce EVs into the city fleet, we were very fortunate that through a regional vote here in this metro area, a local option sales tax. Don't exactly like the acronym that marketing came up with, but this is the LOST tax, local option sales tax. That was passed. That was a 1% on goods and services. That generated some of the revenue for the expansion of the fleet into EVs. So that was a key component of the funding mechanism. Beyond that, again, since fleet services is part of the finance department, we expected individual city departments to plan for EV replacements out of their annual allocation of replacement monies. So in addition, we did receive, we have a means that I'll share with you here briefly of garnering a portion of the federal tax incentive. Although we are a city government or entity, we do have, in fact, a means to garner a portion of that through our lease purchase model. And that really starts with Again, this is specific to governments. The Sourcewell Cooperative Purchasing Advantages, or it's a state of Minnesota cooperative purchasing. It meets our requirements of open and competitive purchasing. So we're able to use Sourcewell awarded contracts to specific vendors, and we can lease purchase the EVs to garner a portion of that federal tax incentive. So that was these funding and purchasing mechanisms were very integral into our initial success to introduce EVs into the fleet. Oops, lost the slide there. Here we go. It's coming back, it looks like. Don't need to see that again. Sorry about that. Here's some specifics of how that worked. Again, if you're a municipality or a government entity, you would have access to the Sourcewell. They're already awarded. They've been competitively bid contracts. There's a couple of leasing companies. I'll mention them by name because we've actually used both the Leasing Services Center out of Minnesota and D&M Leasing out of Texas. Those have been awarded, both of those companies have been awarded Sourcewell contracts. So we have utilized both of those leasing companies. And really, we were able to negotiate master lease agreements under those contract terms for, it's a 24-month, but it's a single payment. We chose the option of a single upfront payment because we were indeed funded, remember, from the local option sales tax, departmental allocations, and we garner a portion of that federal tax incentive off of there. So this, I think this is, I like to start with the high points here. This was a tremendous value here. We were able to acquire some 2022 model year Nissan Leafs for an all-in cost, $18,000. Because it is a lease purchase arrangement over 24 months, but we're making a single upfront payment just out of a little bit of savings, and there's some convenience on the city accounting side. For the bank to offer a portion of the federal tax incentive to us off of the capitalized cost of the vehicle, they have to hold the title for 24 months. So it is a lease purchase where they hold the title for 24 months. There's a $1 buyout at the end, which I've claimed they may never get that from me, or we'll send them $1 and they'll send us the title. So I think that's a little bit, it's not very unusual. I know that other municipalities will do it, but it's probably, again, it's limited to the government agencies to do that. We also realized that there'd be reduced operating costs in fuel, maintenance, and repair. I'll have a little more specifics on that in a few slides here. The charging infrastructure, there's been, I know we've had quite a bit of talk about that already. That's fortunately, I had the opportunity and I accepted it. As a fleet manager in fleet services, by way of policy, we made the choice that fleet services would be out of the fueling business. It actually shifted to facilities. So, I wasn't relieved of the burden, but that is all coordinated with our facilities department. They're in charge, obviously, of all the city buildings and infrastructure. So I'm on the periphery of that a little bit, wouldn't be able to speak exactly to that. I do know our facilities manager, we have contracts with the charge point level 2. And so level 2 charging systems are put into place as we acquire the city EVs. Here's some of the specifics that I wanted to relate. Again, I personally don't own an EV, but we have 18 Nissan Leafs. We took a narrow view to begin with, and only selected Nissan Leafs for the sedans. They actually, in our analysis that our budget analysts performed, using the lease purchase model and garnering, initially, we had on the first 4 Nissan Leafs, we were able, that particular leasing company and the bank that we utilized a master lease with, they would pass through the $7,500 credit. Currently, we only get 75% or $5,250 of the credit, federal tax and credit. We took a look at the capitalized cost, the initial cost of the Nissan Leaf. There was government incentives available at the manufacturer level previously. Those have since expired. If everyone is aware of what's happening in the retail vehicle market, the government incentives offered by manufacturers, at least for us, based on our due diligence, have expired, so we no longer receive that. The Nissan Leaf also fit most of these applications that I have listed here. I say most because there were some individual user concerns and objections, obviously. We also were very fortunate to place a one Ford E-Transit. That's with our library services. That was the E-Transits at the time we purchased that were difficult availability against supply chain and build times and production times. So that's the current state of our EV fleet now is 18 Nissan Leafs and 1 Ford Transit. Ford Transit's been in service less than a year. I do have the initial 4 Nissan Leafs have about 2 years of runtime, 15,000 miles on them. So that's really it's a small sample, but really that's our best indication of performance yet. Some of the, I'd like to describe a little bit more detail in our applications and see if that may fit some of the municipal users that are on the webinar today. Neighborhood inspections, those are daily use vehicles they're really limited. They don't have to do any off-roading or unimproved. It's not new construction. It's really property improvement inspectors. That's been the best use of those vehicles. They really don't exceed 8,000 miles a year. So it's unfortunate that we don't have a higher use spot to use EVs. Did have some concerns of their ability to get around in cold Iowa and Illinois. I would think would apply to Illinois also, the cold winters. The 2 issues that had come up were the traction that they might get because of just the scope of the sedan or the type of the car, and then also how much runtime would they achieve. The range for Nissan Leaf, we never really approach the limits of the miles on the range, but of course, to keep the inspectors warm in the wintertime, that does create quite a draw on the battery. There's some things that we can do through the charging system. For example, you can essentially, smart chargers, smart cars, smartphones, you can essentially set it up so the vehicle is preheated prior to the start of the workday. So I know some of the inspectors do that. There's also an opportunity. There is some office hours involved, even each day of inspection. So they can then get to a charger and recharge some or top off. We have one EV in a different position of engineering support. This has been largely successful because it's a pooled vehicle among the engineer group that just has to go about the city for meetings and such. Again, it's not in engineering construction or anything like that. It's housed in a parking ramp adjacent to City Hall, so it's available to multiple users. That can basically be on the charger in ready status all the time. So that's been successful. Again, it's a lower use, 5,000 to 8,000 miles a year. So we'd like to have something that was a little bit more used to garner the environmental benefits, but we don't. Police or criminal investigations or detectives, that's been a challenge for us in several ways. There's some detectives are on a permanently assigned vehicle on a take-home status. We've had to grapple with that, where they've had to be reassigned to an ICE engine vehicle because they are subject to call out around the clock and on a take-home basis. And also just sheer charging infrastructure. We don't have the most modern police station or if you will. So we've had to add on, I know facilities had to add in some charging infrastructure. Again, there's also a little bit of a stigma attached with the, if you're a senior detective in law enforcement, Nissan Leaf may not be your first type of vehicle of choice. So we've had some really some implementation constraints there. But interesting enough, we have an additional 2 Nissan Leafs on order for that same division. So hopefully we're gaining some acceptance. Library services, I mentioned that they are operating the Ford E-Transit 150, very successful. Again, it has dedicated charging. It domiciles at the main library each night, so it has a chance to charge in the off hours. So that has worked extremely well on this initial implementation of the 18 Leafs and the 1 E-Transit. I do have additional units on order. Previous speakers have mentioned the supply chain, really kind of unknown delivery date, but we do have an additional. They will still be Nissan Leafs. There are 6 more that are on order. Nissan had closed their order bank actually last fall, so we're having our leasing companies try to source those out of known inventory. So we will be expanding, hopefully expanding that Nissan fleet Leaf yet this year for us. I mentioned a little bit, this is our one and only example of heavy duty. It's a Mack branded battery electric heavy duty truck. It'll be outfitted. The picture here is a very generic collection body. Ours will be outfitted with a McNeilus brand side loader. So this will be a frontline refuse collection for municipal solid waste or recycling products. We're one of 2 local municipalities in the metro area that still internalizes the solid waste collection. So it's city owned and operated equipment and city staffed for all aspects of municipal collections. This will be the first one with a McNeilus side body. Mack has produced several all electric. New York City had a pilot study and a case study out on rear load. As far as Mack has shared with me, this will be the first one that has the front line side loading capability. So this is the chassis ships to the body upfitter next month, and we would expect to have this in service. So this has come with a entirely different and additional set of challenges. As you might imagine, the charging infrastructure came at a cost. We were the timing was right to try one of these trucks on a pilot basis. The city just completed construction of a new municipal services center. So during that design and construction process, the capacity and infrastructure was in place so that we could continue to electrify the fleet. And so to that end, there was already sufficient local energy provider transformers in place. There was conduit and wiring that were all available. So it should be, hopefully it'll be an easy transition once the chargers in place when take delivery of that heavy duty truck. So this one kind of stands out for me. This might be my legacy as I look toward that retirement sedan for myself. So we'll place this in service this summer. I've covered some of these in the previous slides, but the neighborhood inspectors were concerned about snow and ice traction, heating and cooling, and the charging time. And we do have ways to address that. As I mentioned before, in the case with the Nissan Leaf, and I believe this to be a function of the charger itself and the vehicle, you can preheat it. We found on air conditioning in the summer, obviously we've eliminated all idle time. So it does cause, in neighborhood inspections, it did cause a little bit of a change in behavior. Previously, inspectors, if they were in an ICE engine vehicle to perform their inspection write-ups and file the reports, they were subject to a lot of high idle in the summer, running the air conditioner. The behavior change for city employees has been that they need to create some office environment for that. It does degrade, that range if you can't recharge during the day. So we don't have a real good fix for that. The heating and cooling it. Heating in the wintertime seems to be the biggest draw, and so they have to monitor their battery capacity all the time. I do want to take this chance to talk a little bit about our fleet maintenance. I consider us still early on this path. One specific anecdote that's interesting to me anyway is one of the initial Nissan Leafs that was placed in service has 15,000 miles on it, a couple of years of runtime. And I was initially perplexed that we were actually replacing the tires at 15,000 miles. And we took the approach from repair and maintenance. Obviously it's so many less moving parts. We don't have to change fluids. We put them on a 6-month preventative maintenance inspection schedule. We don't log up very much time twice a year, but we do want to inspect certain aspects of it. So we detected, tire wear at 15,000 miles and visited with our tire supplier, the individual driver. What we found was this goes to drivability. The EVs, even the Nissan Leaf, any of you that own them or operate them or been around them, you have instant torque. So there was probably some driver behavior going on that contributed to that rapid wear. And I've been in fleet management over 20 years, and it was the first time that I had been exposed to, we might want to look at specific tires that go with EVs. So that was actually new to me within the last year. There was some additional tire wear, but possibly attributed to driver behavior. We'll probably rotate the tires more often than maybe we would on an ICE engine. Other than that, if anybody's got a Nissan Leaf, you're probably aware of it. As per the owner's manual, the first time we really need to see that vehicle in fleet services situation is the owner's manual calls out to inspect the cabin air filter 7,500 miles. So we only have 2 years of runtime data, anything that's still under warranty, obviously. So we just have very minimal maintenance and no repair on those initial units. And we would expect that. So I don't have an absolute number for that, but there's a lot of calculators out there that we can use to predict that. I want to take a quick look at our next steps. We've completed an initial 5-year replacement plan, and that coincided with the introduction of EVs we started on it in 2018. We actually got 2020 model years into the fleet. This is a little bit, these last remaining slides are a little bit busier, and I'll try to summarize them, but we looked at going forward on our replacements for the next 5 years is 290 vehicles. And I know I'm over on time here, so I'll summarize these. 290 vehicles are in the existing fleet, and we believe that they might be suitable for electrification. So there's here's the important point. Over 5 years, we think we can get 176 additional EVs. That's really going to be limited by the availability and supply chain and production, all that. So we're poised to continue this progression. I'll conclude with these because I think we're over on time.
Yeah, Brian, we're cutting into the break a little bit and we have some good questions here. So we'll give you one more minute to just wrap it all up. This has been great. Thanks so much.
Okay, yep. All right. Yeah, sorry for the delay. We had our budget analyst perform this really a detailed analysis using some common governmental calculators. We put in our price of gas, and really what we're able, here's the big reveal, not my contact information, but one back here, if I can get back to it, is we think over the course of 5 years, those 176 vehicles, our best prediction is it might cost us some additional incremental money at the front end, but we're getting such an environmental benefit back that it's absolutely worth it to our elected council. And so, that's our first stop. So, sorry for the overreach. The contact information is in there as the slides go out to you. I'd be glad to entertain any contact from attendees as that gets published.
Hi all, I think Brooke's having a few issues with his audio for a minute, but we wanted to thank everyone for listening in on all of this. And this is a long Zoom session, so we're going to take a quick break. So if everybody wants to come back in 5 minutes, take a quick bio break and we'll see you back here soon.
Working now. Okay, Abby, if you want to, there you go. All right, so our next speaker is Marina Minnick. She is this. She's going to be talking about solar programs and incentives. Marina works as the solar programs administrator for the Citizens Utility Board. Marina, thank you so much for joining us, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here at this year's Environmental Summit. And as Brooke said, I will be talking mainly about solar programs and incentives in Illinois. So we can hop right in. And as you said, my name is Marina Minnick, and I'm the Solar Programs Coordinator for Citizens Utility Board. So I have a lot of information and not too much time, so I'll try to go through this all quickly, but you will have access to the slides afterwards if I do go too fast over one thing. But I will be talking about the basics of solar, the incentives, and then a few different options you have for going solar. So before we dive in, just to give a bit of background on CUB, or Citizens Utility Board, we are a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization that focuses on advocating for ratepayers across the state of Illinois. So we try to keep our energy affordable and clean. So working in the renewable energy field really helps to secure a more affordable energy future for the folks of Illinois. So we have a helpful hotline and a website with dozens of fact sheets and guides that you can look at to learn more about your electric and gas bills, about solar, about EVs, and plenty of other topics there. And yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and move right into the presentation. So first we can go through the different solar benefits and basics. So first, why clean and renewable energy? I'm hoping that today the people here are clean energy advocates and that I'm preaching to the choir, but clean and renewable energy is great for quite a few different reasons. First, it helps our environment. Switching from fossil fuels to renewable energy helps to reduce carbon emissions and therefore helping to stop or mitigate climate change. They're also more reliable. They help stop our fossil fuel dependency, whether or not we are getting those fossil fuels domestically or abroad. And panels, solar panels specifically, are really great because they basically just sit on your roof, work for 20 plus years, and there's really low to no maintenance for those panels. Also, clean and renewable energy is great for our workforce development, creating new clean jobs as fossil fuel jobs start to disappear or close down. Next, it's great for our health. So switching from fossil fuels to renewable energy can help to greatly reduce really harmful pollutants such as nitrous oxides, sulfur dioxide, and particulate matter emissions. Those are all really bad for our health. So getting away from those as much as possible is always a good thing. And then finally, going solar is really great for your wallet. It helps to reduce your monthly electric bills, and it even helps to increase the value of your home. And luckily here in Illinois with our tax code, that does not mean that your property taxes will increase as well. So that's just an overview of the benefits of solar, but hopefully you're all with me on that. All right, now we can get more into the basics of solar. Some of you may be more or less familiar with how it works, but essentially, when you do have panels on your home, or this is how any panels work, the sun will shine down on those panels, and the photons, or the energy from the sun, will help to excite the electrons that are in those panels. And this will create a flow of electrons, which generates DC power, direct current power. So DC power is great in panels, it works in batteries, but it is not usable by our homes or by the grid. So that DC power needs to be converted into AC power. So that's at step number 3. It will go through the inverter, which will change unusable power into usable power by our homes and by the grid. Next, it will go through an electric meter. This is going to track the amount of power produced, consumed, and sold back to your utility. And then, of course, number 5, any excess electricity that you produce will go back to your utility's grid, and you will be credited for that power using something called net metering, which I will talk about in a few slides. So when you do get panels on your home, these panels are typically grid tied. So that's kind of what I was referring to in the last slide, where, you know, this power will go to power your home, but any excess electricity gets sent back to the grid. The nice thing about being grid tied is when the sun is not shining, you are also able to receive electricity from the grid back into your home. So this kind of system ensures that you're not going to be losing power every time the sun goes down. If you do want to be more independent, then you are able to get a battery or a backup battery. You can even be tied to the grid and have a battery, but batteries are quite expensive right now, so we don't always recommend them unless you have the money or there's a specific reason why you really need to ensure power 24/7, like maybe you have medical supplies to power. One other thing that some people don't know is that when you do have panels and you are tied to the grid without a battery, if the power goes out, your system and your power will also shut down. And that is in order to protect linesmen who may be doing repairs, because we don't want to be sending live electricity out onto the grid. All right, so now we can get into net metering here. This is what I was talking about with excess electricity. So essentially, if you have solar, anytime your panels produce electricity, they will go to power your home. But if your panels are producing a lot more electricity than you're using, that excess electricity will be sent back to the grid, and your utility will credit you for that amount of electricity that you did send to the grid, which will reduce your overall electric bill each month. And you know, in the summer when you're producing a lot of electricity, those excess credits can kind of store up and roll over from month to month. And in the winter, when the sun is not shining as much and you're producing less, then those excess or stored credits can start to be applied to your bill to reduce it, even if your panels aren't producing much electricity during that month. So for ComEd specifically, these net metering credits will never completely zero out your bill if you're under the standard rate plan, but it will reduce it quite a bit. And ComEd offers 1-to-1 net metering, which means you are being credited at the same rate that you are being charged for electricity. And finally, as I said, these credits do roll over month to month, but excess credits will expire at the end of April. So usually that works out okay because you're producing a lot over the summer and you're using it all up in the winter. So hopefully by the time you get to April, you won't have too many credits expiring there. So here's just a quick sample of a ComEd bill with net metering. So as you can see, on all of your ComEd bills, you already have the meter information section. And when you get solar, an additional line item will appear that will show the amount of electricity that you send to the grid. So this person only used 420 kilowatt hours, but they produced 600 kilowatt hours, meaning the credits completely or almost completely netted out their bill, and they will have an additional 180 kilowatt hours of credits that will roll over to the next month. Here you can see the credits being applied to the bill, and their bill at the end of the month is $15.58. So the reason it isn't zero is because under the delivery section of the bill, those first two line items, the customer charge and the standard metering charge, cannot be netted out by net metering credits. So typically your bill will be around $15 a month with the standard rate plan. If you are an hourly customer, an hourly pricing customer, then your bill will look a little bit different, but this is for people who are not hourly customers. All right, so now we can go through the incentives for going solar. So current incentives can cover around 70% of the total cost of going solar, which is pretty exciting. So I'll step through them quickly and then go into depth about each. But first we have our state solar renewable energy credits, which can cover around 40% currently. Then we have our federal tax credit, which is set at 30%. And then finally, those utility net metering credits also help you to pay your system back a lot faster because you are getting your bill down to around $15 a month if your system is sized to meet 100% of your usage. A couple notes that I like to mention in this section. First, in Illinois, it is illegal for your homeowners association to outright block you from going solar. They may be allowed to put in prohibitive rules, like you can only have panels on the back of the home, things like that, but they are not allowed to outright block you. And then also a lot of people ask about how solar affects their insurance, and it's really hard to say. Different providers deal with solar in different ways. Some don't have solar effector policy at all, and then others do. So it's really something you need to talk to your insurance provider about. All right, so now we can talk about these different incentives one by one. So first we have the SRECs, or the solar renewable energy credits. These credits come through a program called Illinois Shines. Illinois Shines was created back in 2016 with the Future Energy Jobs Act, and it was re-upped and expanded just this past fall in 2021 with the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act. And through Illinois Shines, the state has a goal to reach 50% renewable energy by 2040. So when you go solar on your property, the state wants to be able to count your production toward their overall goal, but they cannot do that unless they pay you for it, which is where this incentive comes from. So how it works is when you get panels on your home, the installer or an approved vendor or aggregator will estimate the amount of electricity that your panels produce over the course of 15 years. That amount of energy generated will then be multiplied by a rate or a value of what the SREC is. So right now, the value of the SREC is pretty high, so it's a really good time to be going solar in Illinois. And you will receive that full SREC payment around, we usually say 6 to 10 months after your system is live and producing electricity. Usually how that works is the installer will, or an approved vendor will apply on your behalf. So the state will send the check to them and they will send it to you. So there's typically around a 10% cut out of that due to a processing fee. And then SRECs are also considered taxable income. So those are two things to note, but even after that, they're still covering around 30 to 40% of your total cost of solar. Then we have the federal tax credit, which is currently set at 30%. This credit was re-upped by the Inflation Reduction Act that passed this late summer. Before the Inflation Reduction Act, this credit was set to expire. So it's a good thing that they re-upped it. And this tax credit covers labor, system installation, interconnection wiring, and it even covers batteries if you do choose to get one. And that's also something new that the IRA added. This credit does not include a new roof, but it will include any structural reinforcement needed for your structure to be able to support panels. However, that is a pretty rare situation. So the home must be owned by the taxpayer, but it does not need to serve as the principal residence. And this is a non-refundable tax credit that reduces what you owe on your income taxes. So if it is greater than what you owe 1 year, it will roll over to the next year. But of course, if you do not have a tax appetite, then this is not the most useful incentive for you. All right, and then I just like to show a bit of a before and after those incentives. So here in this example, we have a system that is initially coming out to around $22,000. So I found this number by using a 6.5 kilowatt sized system, which is around the average size in Illinois. And I used a $3.50 per watt price. That's typically how installers will represent a price or cost for solar. This includes everything, the turnkey system. And typically we're seeing per watt prices of around $2.50 to maybe $4.50 or $5. So we start out there, and then we have our Illinois SREC at $8,000. I think that's around 36%. And then we have our tax credit of almost $7,000. So at the end, we are looking at a price just under $8,000 versus $22,000. So pretty good reduction in cost there. It definitely helps to make solar feel a lot more possible for a lot of different people. Of course, you do owe the $22,000 at the start, or your start price, since you will not receive these incentives until months later. So it is important to account for that and get some type of bridge loan to cover the cost until you get your incentives back. All right, and final section here is your different options for going solar. So first, I want to talk about the options you have when actually getting solar panels on your roof. So there are 3 different options you have. The first one is to purchase those panels outright. This means you're taking care of all of the upfront costs. You are the owner of those panels, and by being the owner of the panels, you are receiving the federal incentive, the state incentive, and of course you get the electricity and the net metering. Then there are 2 other options that are pretty similar. So first we have the option of leasing a system. So this is when a solar company will install panels on your home, and that company will remain the owner of those panels. So they will receive the federal incentive, they will receive the state incentive, and what you will receive is electricity in your home and the net metering. So this option is attractive to consumers because you are able to avoid the upfront costs that come with solar, but you are leasing the system. So essentially you're paying rent or fixed monthly fee in order to have these panels on your home. And we have found that the savings are typically much greater by owning your panels than by leasing those panels, because you are able to get your bill as low as possible with owning those panels. And you don't owe anyone money for having them on your roof each month, besides perhaps if you're, when you're financing. And then the third option is a power purchase agreement. So this is very similar to a lease, but instead of a fixed payment each month, you're paying for a price per kilowatt hour. Essentially, you're paying for the amount of electricity your panels produced. So on months where they produce more, you'll pay more. When they produce less, you'll pay less. So, and kind of goes the same way, where the overall savings over the course of 20 or 25 years is much less with the PPA than ownership. There are other things to look out for leases and PPAs. One is that these companies are allowed to include up to a 2.9% cost escalator every year. So at the end of a 20-year contract, you could be paying around 50% more monthly than you were at the start. There can also be some tricky things in the contract when it comes to maybe wanting to move or transfer that contract to the next homeowner. So at Cub, we really recommend that you fully explore your ownership options before looking into a lease or PPA. And if you are looking at these options, you also want to make sure that your roof is okay to have solar panels on it. So just a few different considerations here. First is that a south-facing roof is the most ideal, but an east or west-facing roof will still work. You may need around 10 to 20% more panels to produce as much as a south-facing roof. The next thing, you definitely want unshaded exposure. So try to avoid shading from trees, building poles. It is also important to have the best exposure from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. That's what we call the solar window. And if you want to get an idea of how much sun exposure your roof does get, you can go to Google Project Sunroof, type in your address, and it will populate kind of a solar irradiation map where you can see how much sun your roof is getting throughout the day. Also, I forgot to mention north-facing roofs, for those of you who are wondering, are not ideal for panels unless you have a very low pitch around 5 to 10 degrees. So definitely south is best, and east and west are still good. People also often ask about weather conditions. So panels are rated for snow, hail, and wind loading, so you should not have a problem with any of those. If your panels are completely covered with snow, they will not produce electricity, but all it takes is one corner to become exposed. And once it gets some sunlight on it, those panels will heat up ever so slightly and melt the rest of that snow off. Roof condition is also important to consider. You will have these panels up for 20 years, so you definitely want a roof that can handle that, because it is an added cost to take panels down, replace your roof, and then put them on somewhere in between the duration of the lifespan of your panels. And finally, for those of you who have squirrel problems in your yard, you may want to consider something called a critter guard that closes the gap between the panels and the roof so that critters cannot get at your wiring. So that is something you can talk to your installer about. The next program I want to talk about is called Community Solar. So this is a great program for people who cannot put panels on their roof for whatever reason. Maybe you're a renter, you have a condo, or your roof is completely surrounded by trees. So with Community Solar, you are able to subscribe to a small portion of a community solar project as long as it is built somewhere in your utility territory. So for folks here today, you can subscribe to any project in ComEd, even if it's 100 miles away, it's still going onto the same grid. And the way that this works is really anyone, a resident or a small business, can subscribe to a portion of a community solar garden. When you do subscribe, they will work to size your subscription to match your annual average usage. And how it works is when your subscription produces electricity, the community solar garden will report that amount of electricity to your electric utility. So they'll tell ComEd, ComEd will credit you for that amount on your bill, similar to net metering, but you will have to still pay a subscription fee back to that community solar company each month. Luckily, there's some competition right now and good incentives for these companies, so they are able to pass on a discount. So just a really quick example here. In the purple, we have someone without community solar. This month, they used 800 kilowatt hours, resulting in a $109 bill. And now the same person with community, with community solar, they still used 800 kilowatt hours, but their panels produced 714 kilowatt hours, which resulted in a $59 bill. because of that $50 credit. Now, when it comes time to pay the solar provider back, instead of paying the full value of the electricity, which is $50, they're getting a 20% discount on that supply and only paying $40. So community solar is a nice way to save a small amount of money and be involved in the growth of solar generation in the state of Illinois. And here's just an example of the bill. I'm going to skip through these because we're a bit short on time. CUB also has a website that shows a comparison chart of all companies currently offering community solar in Illinois. So you can look at all of these columns side by side to figure out the best plan for you. That is solarinthecommunity.com. And then the final program I wanted to talk about is Solar for All. This is the income eligible program in the state of Illinois. You can go through the program to get rooftop solar, community solar, and there's even a subcategory for nonprofits and public facilities. Solar for All is essentially the absolute most affordable way to go solar in the state of Illinois, and you must make or be at 80% area median income or below, which varies on region and household size. So you can visit illinoissfa.com to learn a bit more about that if you do feel you may qualify, but it's definitely the cheapest, most affordable way to go solar if you qualify, and there's a lot of money in the program ready to be spent, especially in the rooftop program. And just to note, there are 2 offers for rooftop right now, GRNE and Sunrun, and they are set up as either leases or PPAs with 0 monthly payment. So essentially you're able to get panels for free because the incentives are so good for the installer that they're able to pass on all savings to the consumer. And then just a few different websites for how to find an installer. We usually recommend getting 3 to 4 solar quotes. So I really like the ICEA Residential Installers Directory. NABCEP also has a list of trained and certified solar installers. NABCEP is the industry standard certification for solar installers. And then finally, Illinois Shines is that state program I mentioned, and they have a really great consumer protection database where you can essentially scroll through any complaint that has ever been made against a solar installer to make sure the ones you're talking about don't have too many complaints. And just in the interest of time, I'll kind of skip this, but energy efficiency is very important before going solar. You want to make sure your usage is as low as possible so you can, save money on a smaller system. I think that is all I have. Hopefully we have a couple minutes for questions here, but here's my contact info if anybody thinks of questions after the presentation.
Thanks so much for your time here, and thanks for everyone for the great questions. One of the first questions that came in is, could you talk a little bit more to what happens to the solar panels after 20 years?
Yep. So right now, I think there definitely are a lot of people thinking about this and trying to come up with solar panel recycling. But essentially, you would need to call someone who does recycle solar panels or the same solar company you worked with and have them take them down. There is definitely a cost to that, which I don't know off the top of my head, but very good question. And I'm hoping in the next 20 years, we'll have a really great solution for that, or at least a better one than we have now.
Thank you. We had a few questions around how solar kind of ties into the grid and specifically looking at EVs. Could you address how we could use the DC power from solar panels to charge a battery in an EV? And if that's something that we'll be able to look at as common use to charging an EV during a power outage in the future?
Yeah, I know people get those, I think they're called modular solar panels on their garage that will go straight to their EV to charge them. So that is definitely an option and a way to completely avoid the grid. So I think we will definitely be seeing more of those in the future, especially as people start to get more electric vehicles. So yeah, that's definitely an option of completely avoiding the grid. Yep.
So there's a question here about some of the tax credits and how to sort of understand the different programs and things that are out there. someone wanted to clarify if they're understanding correctly. Is it only homeowners that have that $22,000 upfront that can start to take advantage of those tax credits?
So I think most people probably don't, completely purchase their system with cash up front. Most people do finance their system. So I think the point I was trying to make is with the tax credit, that is a non-refundable tax credit that will reduce what you owe on your income taxes. So it kind of depends on how much you owe in income taxes. And that will then cause how much you can get back, I guess. So of course you won't be saving that money until tax season. So if you get your panels in August, you kind of have to wait the whole year until that will help you out there. And same with the state incentive, that is completely taken care of by your installer if you have a good installer. So that's a good question to ask. And that usually just takes around 6 to 10 months to come back to you. So my point is most people will finance the whole system, but since you'll be getting a bulk back, you can finance part of it with a bridge loan instead of doing a regular loan for the whole thing.
Marina, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I think that's probably good for that question.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Marina, so much. You did a great job, and those were some good questions, and thanks for answering those. And I hope that some of those questions will be answered later. So we've shifted sort of from EV to solar here, and keeping with that theme, I'm happy to introduce Marla Westerhold right now. Marla is the manager for the Green Power Connection team with ComEd, and she's going to talk about ComEd Solar Calculator. Marla, thank you for joining us, and I'm going to turn it over to you.
Wonderful. Hello, everyone. I believe I'm sharing my screen. Please let me know if you can see it.
Yes.
Okay, great. So good morning. Thank you, Brooke. My name is Marla Westerhold, and I'm the manager of the Green Power Connection team at ComEd. I've been with ComEd about 12 years, and I have a master's degree in environmental management and sustainability, and I'm also a certified arborist. And in my role, I oversee a team that assists customers who are navigating the solar options available to them. And I help shape our company's solar toolkit investment strategies. Thank you so much for the invitation to participate in this great event. And I'm really happy to be here today to discuss the resources that we have available for ComEd customers who are interested in researching or pursuing solar. And I'm also glad to follow Marina's talk and all the information she shared about solar power. And I think my presentation will tie in with that information. So Marina mentioned these options, but in Illinois, we do have two options available. The first is to install a private solar system, and usually this goes on your roof. The second option is to subscribe to a community solar project. And Marina explained this, but if you subscribe to community solar, you pay a monthly subscription fee to that solar project, and you would receive a portion of the energy produced, which you will see reflected as a credit on your ComEd bill. And the chart on the right of this screen shows some of the things that you can think about if you're considering private versus community solar. And our website has additional resources and information to help you determine which option would be best for you. If you're thinking about putting solar on your own roof, you can use ComEd's private solar calculator. I've included a QR code on this slide, but you can also reach the solar calculator and all of our solar resources at comed.com/solar. So this solar calculator tool will use your location combined with a scan of your roof that will evaluate for the factors of the roof direction, the slope, and the shading. And going through the tool, you'll just input a few pieces of information that will customize your results to your specific location. Once you go all the way through the calculator, the tool will give you a personalized report that will include costs and incentives and your payback period. So if you're thinking about going solar, we do encourage you to get multiple quotes and to really understand the implications of buying versus leasing panels. And Marina mentioned these items as well. So next, I'm going to show you how the calculator looks as you proceed through the evaluation. It's really just a few pieces of information to input, starting with your address, and you can see this in the image on the left. If you're signed into your ComEd account, the tool will pull your address from your account information, and that'll be populated already. We do recommend that you sign into your ComEd account so that you can get a more accurate estimate based on your actual usage and your rate plan, but you can also go through the calculator as a guest user. After the address step, the middle image shows where you confirm that it is your roof based on an aerial view. And then the image on the right shows you a visual solar irradiance indicating the solar potential in each part of the roof. In this example, you can see that most of the roof has great solar potential, but because you can see from the golden areas, but in the south edge of the roof, which I just highlighted here, that shows some areas of lower potential, and that's due to the trees that you see on the south side of the roof line. So in step 2, the calculator will ask you to either confirm your monthly usage or input it in kilowatt hours, depending if you're using this in guest mode or if you're signed into your account. Step 3 is an enhancement we've added recently. We're asking customers if they're planning to include electric vehicles so that we can help you size your rooftop system to accommodate the solar production that you would need to offset the extra demand from an electric vehicle. For a residential home, we're assuming that one electric vehicle will require an extra 3,000 kilowatt hours per year. And that is based on analysis of other ComEd customers with electric vehicles and their charging patterns. We're currently in the process of enhancing our solar calculator further to also allow you to indicate if you're going to be converting to a gas stove to electric, or if you would be converting natural gas heating to an electric heat pump, as well as other electrification enhancements that you may be considering. And this future enhancement in our calculator will be available in early April. So once you've entered your usage, including what you think you may add in the future, you'll proceed to your report page, which you see in step 4. So here's a sample from a report page for rooftop solar. And this is the kind of thing you would be able to see if you proceed through our solar calculator. This report includes your estimated installation costs, the payback time frame, the value of the incentives that you would qualify for, and other information. On this report screen, you can also download a PDF of your customized report, and you can use that to evaluate the bids that you might be getting from a solar contractor. It's important to note that the incentives and rebates are only available to the owner of the system. Marina emphasized this as well, but if you are considering a lease arrangement, you would not be eligible to claim the rebates, and your solar developer would receive those instead. So the other option to consider would be a community solar subscription, and we also offer a calculator that will help you assess this option. It's set up similar to the private solar calculator in that you'll get a more accurate estimate if you're signed into your ComEd account. So step 1 in the community solar calculator is to enter or confirm your monthly usage. In step 2, you would input if you have received a specific offer. Like for instance, if the solar developer says you're going to save 15% on your energy cost, you can input 15% here. And for step 3 in the community solar calculator, we are also asking about electric vehicle usage so that you can properly size your community solar subscription to offset your usage. I have a QR code here on the screen as well, and you can also navigate here through our website again, comed.com/solar. So this next one shows the report page that you would see with a community solar calculator. Once you navigated through, you'll see this customized report. And I'm just showing a portion of how that report will look here. You'll have the opportunity to use the slider on the left to change the amount of energy that you'd like to offset via community solar. And then the two boxes on the right show you your subscription size along with your costs and savings with a subscription. The middle box shows your savings based on your current energy use. And then the box on the right would show you the savings if you're including an electric vehicle. And on this page, you can also download a copy of your report in a PDF. And we're going to be enabling some additional features in 2023 here as well. So if you're thinking about solar, please know that ComEd offers quite a few resources to assist you. ComEd does not sell solar, and our goal is really to be an unbiased source of information for you as you evaluate your options. The Green Power Connection team is a specialized team of solar subject matter experts, and you can reach us directly on the phone or via email, and we're here to help you wherever you are in your solar journey. We really would love to help you whatever way we can as you're thinking about solar. Our team also maintains the information available on the website at comed.com/solar, including the solar calculators. And we also work on custom communications for our solar net metering customers. And if you are an existing net metering customer and you already have solar, but you have a question about your bill or an issue, our team is the one that will help you by working with other departments across the company to answer your question or resolve any issues. If you're thinking about solar, please start by taking a look at our website. We have a lot of great information there. And as you can see in the image on the right, I've highlighted the areas on the website where you can access the two calculators from our main landing page. So I just want to say thank you for the opportunity again to participate and share some information today about ComEd resources for solar customers. We're really excited about the trajectory of the solar technology and the advancement of it across DuPage and Northern Illinois. I've included our contact information here once again on this page, and please feel free to reach out to us anytime. And, thank you again. And if we still have a few minutes, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks so much, Marla. This has been great. We have a few questions pending here, and one of them is, are all solar panels created equal in terms of their collection and conversion efficiency, or are there some that are more efficient than others?
Yeah, there is definitely a range in the panel efficiencies, and as technology advances, the efficiency of the panels is also improving every year. So we use some kind of, industry averages for the moment in our calculator, but you may get a more detailed analysis of what the panels could produce when you are exploring bids from solar contractors.
Thank you. So we have some folks who are on the line here who aren't in ComEd, isn't there the company that they go to for electricity? Can you talk about, can folks still use this as a tool for their own calculations that they're making in regards to solar?
So, like for instance, Naperville, some of the addresses are available in our calculator and some are not, because it's really only for those in the ComEd territory. You can certainly try and see if your address will work there. But we just have some boundaries were drawn around the ComEd territory, and that's the data that they are mining for these rooftop scans. So your address may not be available if you are not served by ComEd at the moment.
Great, thanks so much. And I think from there, if you have, somebody has a question about if you put the panels on your roof in previous years, do you know much about if there's a way to get retroactive tax benefits from installation, or is it only forward facing?
I believe, so there are some nuances in the law with the CEJA law. We have some timelines, and certain things are only effective going forward. But like for the federal income tax credit, I believe you can claim that retroactively. I'm not positive about that, or the SREX either. It would have to be for systems that were not previously claimed.
Okay, great. Thanks so
Thank you,
much.
Marla. Yeah, thank you. Good job. And again, we appreciate ComEd's involvement in our morning here. You guys have been great to work with. Thank you. Well, we're going into the home stretch here, and so I'm going to introduce the next speaker, Mark Frigo. He leads the origination and development of energy storage project for a company called Nexamp, which is a leading solar and energy storage company. So this is great. And Mark, go ahead and take it away. We're looking forward to your presentation.
Hi, thanks, Brooke. Good morning, all, and thanks for having me here. This is a lot of great stuff that we've heard from Megha, Ken, Brian, Marina, and Marla just now on EVs and solar. And, I'm actually going to use some of it. I'm actually in the market for an EV right now. And I actually participate in the community solar program with my company, Nexamp, which has a solar farm actually not too far from the Conservation Foundation's nice piece of land that they have, Dayton Bluffs down in LaSalle County. So I'm going to talk more about energy storage today. And I'm going to talk about how where it's come and how it's important to the new energy world. I'm also going to talk about the applications or the benefits of energy storage. I'm going to talk about the technology, give some project examples, and also talk about the challenges that we have currently with storage, and then have a little wrap up and Q&A, hopefully, if we have some time. I think it's important to start, though, understanding that when we look at climate change and we look at greenhouse gas emissions, I think Ken mentioned it earlier, transportation accounts for about 25%. It's the largest provider of emissions that we have, but also the electric power sector provides about 25% as well. Industry, 24%, commercial and residential, 13% of emissions, and then agriculture provides 11% of emissions. So, we're touching on just about all those sectors with the exception of agriculture, and maybe that's a topic for the future here to discuss. So it's important that you can't just target just one sector from an emissions perspective. You got to target all of them. And one of the things that I'm focusing on is really the electricity sector. And traditionally electricity couldn't be stored. The grid was developed more of a just-in-time delivery system, whereby you typically would have generating power plants generate power, send that power over high voltage transmission distribution lines, which would then send those to homes and businesses. However, the world has become increasingly complex, and that has increased the need for energy storage. As I mentioned before, there's one-way power system with power plants sending power to businesses, homes, and industries. But we got an emerging energy cloud here. The electricity system is becoming much more complex. You have intermittent sources of power with wind and solar, and you have electric vehicles, you have decentralized power, people putting solar panels on their roofs. And so it's becoming much more hard to kind of manage, so to speak. And so this is where energy storage comes into play. And just seeing there we go. And one of the things that energy storage has had an issue with in the past, but it's been able to overcome is it's faced a number of challenges. One of them is technical, one of them is economic, and one of them is more regulatory. Some of the technical challenges that storage has faced in the past is on performance, life expectancy, and efficiency. Basically, you just haven't been able to have energy storage be able to put in multiple locations to be able to use it for a long period of time. The life expectancy of batteries, which are now the main source of energy storage, just wasn't that great. And the efficiency, the amount of power that you would have to put in to get out wasn't very good either. They also were very expensive. And the question is how do you pay for them? There's not a lot of value streams, at least in the electricity sector, to be able to justify them. And then finally, regulatory challenges. In the old system, the regulatory environment for the electricity system is you fall into one of three buckets. Either you were a generator, you were a conveyance asset, so either you were a transmission or distribution asset, or you fell in the bucket of you were a load, so you were a user of electricity. Now here comes a technology like energy storage, and could it be a generator? Well, yes, it dispatches power at sometimes, so it can be a generator. Could it be a T&D asset? Actually, it could be, and I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then finally, could it be a load? Well, you have to charge it, so yes, it could be a load. So what rules or regulatory frameworks do you put in to deal with energy storage when it falls into every one of those buckets? And so that's been a challenge as well. The industry has overcome many of those challenges. It's improved the performance, it's improved the life expectancy of batteries. They're used just about in every consumer electronic that you can imagine, and we're starting to use them more and more on a larger scale within our electricity grid. The costs have come down tremendously, notwithstanding the global supply chain issues that we've seen in the last 2 years, 18 months or so. And then those regulatory challenges, both the feds and the states have started to put in very unique energy storage rules and regulations that allow it to be more adequately incorporated into the system efficiently. So energy storage has become is being incorporated more and more into our grid. Now, in terms of the applications or benefits of storage, it's an enabler of renewable energy and of baseload and peaking capacity. Everybody knows this is when we think of, oh, what can we use storage for? This is what we automatically think of, right? You have a solar project. Guess what? The sun doesn't shine in the middle of the night. So how do I get power in the middle of the night? Well, let's use energy storage. Yes, that is one. That's a big use of energy storage, where you take you basically charge a battery during points of high power generation, and using solar, it's middle of the day, and then you store that power and you can dispatch them at high value hours, which are typically when people are coming home from homes and businesses for about 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. When the power is most needed. So that certainly is one usage. But energy storage has many other services that it can provide. And I know this is kind of a crazy little wheel here, and it can look confusing, but let me kind of distill this for you. Storage can be used for not just shifting renewable power. It can be used for 10 to 15 other things if you wanted. There are these things, and this is the green, the ISO, the independent system operator. This is the entity that runs our grid. Here in Northern Illinois and DuPage County, we have this independent system operator called the PJM market. They're the ones that operate our grid. And not only do they need energy, do they need generation, kilowatt hours for all of us to use, they need a number of other services as well to maintain the grid, to make sure that it doesn't fail. Things such as spinning and non-spinning reserves, frequency regulations, where you got to keep your grid on a 60 hertz level, voltage support. These are all types of services that the average person doesn't know what's going on behind the scenes. And this is something that energy storage could help provide the grid. Energy storage helps utilities such as ComEd or in Northern Illinois here, or Ameren, or elsewhere all throughout the country. It provides capacity. So you need every utility needs capacity, because they need to be able to provide the option to turn on the lights if you want it, and that there's a cost associated with that. They also want to, they need to be able to provide transmission and distribution services to be able to get energy from one point to the next. And when you see our grid, you see the transmission towers, very costly. Batteries can actually be used to supplement or replace some T&D infrastructure, and that's being done not necessarily here in Illinois just yet, but it's happening in California and up in the Northeast. And then finally, transmission congestion relief. You can use batteries in strategic locations to be able to lower transmission congestion when there's perhaps too much load in one area and not enough generation. And then finally, you can use batteries for the ultimate end consumer by shifting power around from low cost times to high cost times. You could use it to help lower your bill if you're an industry or even a resident. You could, if you have PV self-consumption, this was mentioned earlier, it could help with that, and it could be used as effectively a backup generator. So many different uses for storage, just beyond being able to shift intermittent renewable energy such as wind and solar. Now, let me talk a little bit more about the technology that's currently being used for storage on the grid. Among available technologies, lithium-ion batteries are currently the type of technology that's being used most often for electric grid purposes. And the reason why is it's a mature and commercially viable solution. There are actually many different types of energy storage. There's many different types of mousetraps here. Pump hydros have been around for 100 years. The problem with pump hydro, you can't put it anywhere. You need a large upper reservoir, a large lower reservoir. From a siting perspective, you just can't use that. You can't put that everywhere. Batteries, lithium-ion batteries are actually the technology of choice right now, just because they're so flexible. They offer a lot of good benefits from energy density. How many kilowatt hours can you fit in a small area? Cost, and the technology is mature. But there are other different types of batteries that are being used as well, potentially used as well. Flow batteries. There's different chemistries beyond lithium ion that are starting to be used. They still have a little ways to go from a benefit perspective in terms of their characteristics, but there's also other types, electromechanical type of storage, compressed air flywheels. There's solar thermal, heat thermal, but the point is lithium ion batteries are really what's being used in the vast majority of energy storage installations that are being put on the grid right now. Now I'm going to take you back to high school chemistry class here, and the beauty of doing this online is I don't have to hear all your groans if we were there in person. But we talk about lithium ion batteries. There are different types of lithium ion batteries. Depending on the type of lithium ion battery, they all have slightly different characteristics when you look at energy density, safety characteristics, cost, and the lifetime, the life expectancy of the battery. Most batteries that are installed, in fact, just about all batteries that are installed that are used for consumer products, so the computer that you're on, if you're on a laptop right now, your laptop battery, your smartphone, most of them use a lithium nickel manganese cobalt oxide battery, NMC, and that's actually what a lot of the batteries that are already installed in the grid are using. A lot of car batteries for EVs are NMC batteries, and there's a reason for that. That type of battery has a very high energy density. So you can, like I mentioned, you could put a lot of kilowatt hours in a small space. However, there's been a movement to move away from MNC batteries more towards lithium iron phosphate batteries, LFP batteries there. The reason being, technology is improving where the energy density was not as good before, but now it's getting better and better. And there are slightly better improved safety characteristics of using LFP batteries as well. But there are, like I said, there's a number of options here. You know, which one you go with depends on the situation and the type of project and what its use case is. And I talked about, so showed that wheel. What use case you're actually using there will depend on the type of battery that you actually use. So in terms of some project examples of what we're using here at Nexamp, my company, is just to give a couple of different examples. Here on the left, we're looking at, we're putting in a solar and storage facility at a hospital in Massachusetts. This project is actually being used to help that hospital use more PV consumption on site. I should have circled that, but also primarily to help lower their energy cost. They get a demand charge on their bill. They have an energy cost on their bill, and it helps lower that by shifting shifting their power to more cheaper tariffs, and it's used as a backup power. So in essence, it can replace their diesel generators that they have on site. On the right there, we have a solar and storage project that we put on called Hales Mills, and that is a project in New York that we built, and that project is the storage piece of it. It's actually, the solar piece is actually used for community solar in New York, in the state of New York. The storage piece is actually used for capacity in the New York market. And it's also used for frequency regulation. So it helps the New York independent system operator keep the frequency at 60 hertz in their grid. And so it keeps their grid stable and lowers the possibility for a blackout. Some other types of project examples that storage is being used for on the grid is on the left there. Watertown, non-wires alternative. Watertown is a town in upstate New York and along Lake Ontario, and it's actually has both solar on it and a battery. The storage is once again being used for community solar in New York, but it also charges the battery, and the battery is being used for a substation upgrade. So effectively, this is an area that's seeing increased load, increased development. They've looked over the next 10 to 20 years and expect a lot more energy to be needed in that area in terms of development, homes, that sort of thing. And to be able to meet that demand, they were going to have to upgrade the substation, and there was going to be a many $1 million type of upgrade, both to the substation and surrounding transmission and distribution lines, and because they needed to be able to prevent the substation overload. Storage, we were able to put in a storage project here to basically eliminate that need, because what happens is in the peak part of the summer, when they expect the load to hit a certain amount and go over to substation limits, the battery can come online and be able to provide the power to the local community so it effectively supplements the power going through the substation. So that's where it's used as a distribution deferral project, and it also helps with the capacity in the New York market as well. And then on the right, we have a project in Massachusetts called Millbrook, which is a standalone energy storage project. It's quite large, 20 megawatt, 80 megawatt hour. And it basically provides power into the ISO, Independent System Operator of New England, which runs the electricity grid from Maine down through Massachusetts, Rhode Island, and Connecticut. And it provides energy, it provides ancillary services, frequency regulation, keeping it at 60 hertz, and then also capacity as well. And then the other interesting thing that we're doing now that my team is actually working on is we're developing residential storage projects and putting them in homes. And then we're aggregating these storage projects, and they're smaller than what we would use on the grid. But and the way we're working this is it works as a virtual power plant when we aggregate them together. So we have a pilot project that we're working on right now in Massachusetts. That's as you can see there on the left, 180 kilowatts, and it's a duration of 2 hours. So 180 times 2, 360. Kilowatt hours, and how this works is and we're using it with a select group of our community solar community solar customers is they get a free battery put into their home, and they get to use it for backup power. So if the power goes off, the battery is able to supply power to their home in the case of an outage. But when there's not an outage, we manage the battery from a distance, and we actually take their battery, we aggregate it with other batteries, and we combine all those together to run effectively a virtual power plant. And then we take that, just like that Millbrook project, much bigger one I just mentioned in Massachusetts, and we bid that into the ISO New England to provide energy and also capacity. And there's also a couple other programs in Massachusetts that allow us to do this. So we're testing this out in Massachusetts, and assuming that it goes well, we'll start rolling it out to other places throughout the country, and hopefully including Illinois. So that's another way that we're implementing energy storage as well. Now, I talked about the good with energy storage. There are still some challenges that we're facing with using energy storage as well. It's important to note, energy storage is not a silver bullet. Many people think it is. It's not a silver bullet. The only silver bullet to climate change and global warming is to use less energy. But that's not realistic. And that's why we're doing multiple things along multiple sectors to try to do things better. But with energy storage, there's three effective challenges that we're still working through. One is a safety challenge, one is a raw material scarcity challenge, and the last one is supply chain constraints and sourcing. From a safety perspective, batteries are safe, but they are still an electrical piece of equipment. And there are a few instances where you've seen, a Tesla fire or issues with lithium ion batteries before. They can be quite flammable, but there are a number of safety precautions put in, and we obviously have to do that with larger installations as well. And some of the things we do to mitigate that is there are a number of codes that we follow: National Fire Protection Association standards. There's also United Laboratories testing methodologies that we follow for fire safety hazards. All of our storage systems, really not ours, but all really have a battery management system, which ensures, and that's basically the brains, the software that tells the battery how to operate, and it does so within a safe and approved limit. There are containerized systems that have battery modules designed and separated in such a way to kind of to isolate them and make them resistant to thermal propagation. There's specialized cooling systems for these systems as well, because when you see them, they're basically put in basically the size of, call it, tractor trailer. That's effectively the size, and then we kind of group them together. We also work closely and with projects. We engage and train the local fire department on what to do in case of an emergency. This is really what most power plants have in place anyway. And then a lot of the R&D that's being done with battery manufacturers is moving to chemistries with better safety characteristics. I mentioned before the move from NMC batteries to lithium iron phosphate batteries. That just shows that trying to improve the chemistries to lower any potential fire risk that there may be. Raw material scarcity is an issue as well. The components, the chemical components of batteries are, come from not many places throughout the world. So there's a lot of research and development going on to those different chemistries to basically be able to use more abundant raw materials instead of things like cobalt, which are a bit rare. And also in terms of the recycling of these, the recycling technology does exist. It's about 95% efficient. So effectively, you can recycle upwards of 95% of a battery. It's important to note that only 10% of the batteries are out of all the batteries that are being used, 90% of them are being used for EVs. 10% are actually being used for the grid here. And so with the explosion of electric vehicles and of grid usage over the next several years here, there will be mining. You just need the material, and it's going to take a number of years before there's enough, call it, material in the system to be able to theoretically to be able to regenerate itself, where you don't have to mine anymore. So mining is still going to have to occur to be able to use energy storage. And then there's also supply chain constraints and sourcing issues, as many of you have followed in the news. The Inflation Reduction Act that was passed last year has provisions for domestic content, which is great. Most batteries are actually manufactured overseas, most of them in China, and there's a lot of plans now because of the Inflation Reduction Act for battery manufacturers to move production to the United States. But these are billion-dollar manufacturing facilities. You just can't build them in a couple weeks' time. The first ones that will go online are scheduled for late 25. So it's going to be, it takes years to be able to shift these types of manufacturing facilities to here. And then also we also deal with with our supply chain, trying to avoid suppliers with questionable supply chains. There are some batteries that are coming from China, and there's some question as to whether the ultimate source of some of the materials is coming from the Uyghur region in Western China. And there's also dealing with the Congo and child labor for the mining of certain elements as well. So this is one thing that the industry continues to grapple with, to try to move production away from areas that are questionable. So that's kind of all I was going to talk about today. In terms of a summary here, with the influx of renewable generation and digitization, increased use of vehicles, and the subsequent need for grid stability, energy storage really plays a critical role in our new energy world. It really allows renewable generation, the solar, wind, to become a baseload or peaking generation, which has always been a big criticism of solar and wind in the past. As I mentioned, it provides grids of resiliency through ancillary services, the deferment, elimination of transmission and distribution upgrades, energy storage in homes and businesses, works alongside other programs, demand response, energy efficiency programs in innovative ways, because it basically allows you to shift power, which decrease to times when it's not needed as much, and that decreases pollution, provides important services, and lowers energy costs. And pushing innovative technology like storage is vital to meeting our future energy needs. So really appreciate the opportunity to talk. I don't know if we have a minute for questions, but certainly there's my contact information if you wanted to contact me directly with any questions. I'm happy to answer.
Mark, thank you so much. There were a few questions specific to you. Someone on the A team will share those with you if you can't get them, and you can respond directly to the person asking the question, okay?
Sure.
All right, great, thank you. Appreciate it, good job. Yeah, battery storage is a big deal. We need to learn more about that. So we appreciate you joining us today, Mark. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're going to roll into our last session here. It'll be a short presentation with plenty of time for some answering some questions here. So Lois, I think you're going first. So I want to introduce Lois Vitsail. Lois is a member of our board of trustees here at the Conservation Foundation. Her area of expertise is sustainable architecture. And she just recently retired as the Chief Sustainability Officer at White & Company. So Lois, thank you. And also I want to introduce David Beckwith. He'll be joining Lois in this little question and answer period. David helped organize the event this morning, along with his wife, Lisa. And David he's a retired software engineer, and we appreciate his time spending with us today. So Lois, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Okay, thank you. David and I are really going to sort of bring it back down and talk about EV ownership. So I think we're going to mostly focus on that. I loved listening to all the speakers this morning. I want to know from Mark when I can take my battery on my electric vehicle and plug it into my house and run my house off of it, because there's all this capacity on batteries driving around that could be used right now to power houses. I am a longtime EV owner. I had started with a hybrid in 2004, got my first plug-in hybrid in 2012, and I currently drive a Chevy Bolt. So it's been a long time coming. When I was working with White & Company in 2012, we put our first charging station in, and I was the only EV owner at the time. Now we have 2 charging stations, and we have 12 employees that show up every day in EVs. So we have to cycle through people moving vehicles in and out to accommodate charging. But many of the cars have long range and really don't need to charge every day. So that's kind of a myth. So I'm going to set the table for a minute, and then David is really going to take a point on answering questions about myths about EVs. So I wanted to start by sort of making the statement that our grandchildren will be driving electric vehicles. It's the future. It is coming. And it started a while back. You can see on this chart that in 2022, there were 10 million EVs sold globally. And that's up from 6 million the year before. In China, 30% of their vehicles sold last year were EVs. So this is coming, this chart shows sort of the exponential growth of EVs. In addition, not only are EVs more populous and you're seeing them on the street, but there are commitments made by governments and by automakers to phase out new internal combustion engines in favor of producing EVs. And today, that represents 41% of the personal vehicle use on the globe that will phase them out by 2035. And if you add the automakers commitments into that, that's by 2040, it increases to 30%. So here's a slide of who's doing what where. So Norway they get the red flag for being the country that is being the most sort of aggressive. In 2025, there will no longer be the sale of any ICEs, internal combustion engines, in their country. And that's only 2 short years away. Then there's a whole rash of countries that are have the 2030 commitment. You can see mostly in the UK. And then in California is the only place in the US so far that has a phase out commitment on ICEs, and that's by 2035. And you can see South America is on, or actually Central America is on the list, with Costa Rica phasing out sales of new ICEs by 2050. So it's really coming. So there was one of the questions in the question and answers was, are there other cars besides Tesla? Tesla certainly had a large sale of new markets and early on, and really sort of set the bar for EVs. But there are many, many kinds of EVs. These pictures on this slide of Ford and Audi and Rivian and Subaru and Nissan is not meant to be the only EVs that are available. There are a lot more. This summer, I was at a fast charge station in Rockford, and it's the only single time in the years since 2012 that I actually needed to fuel up at a fast charge station, because I found myself needing enough charge to get home into Downers Grove. But as I was sitting there getting charged, a Ford Mustang EV shows up to charge, a Volvo shows up, an Audi shows up, and I was just amazed at the variety of owners and vehicles that were available for EVs. So it was a great place to hang out, to sort of get a view on how many different EVs there are available. So you can find EVs from most manufacturers now. So I wanted to set the stage just for a minute. You've heard a lot of this vocabulary today, but it is a little different than an internal combustion engine. At the top of the hour, this morning, Megha mentioned range anxiety. So what is that? When you fill up your car with gas, you figure you have 250 to 300 miles range. And you watch the gauge go down. In electric vehicles, there are range that are posted. There's a mileage that's sort of like the median that you could expect to have left in your battery until you get home. And then there's a high range and a low range. And so it depends a lot, just as in gas, on how you drive, what the weather is. And there are lots of different ranges from different EVs. So my Chevy Bolt that I drive today has about a 260-mile range. That does diminish in cold weather, not significantly, but it does burn up faster. And so when you're a new EV driver, you're always watching that range to make sure you can get where you go. But most people drive about 25 miles a day. That's just the posted statistic of how far people drive, and most EV ranges can easily accommodate a round trip on that. So I drive all over Chicagoland every day and don't worry about range. In the summertime, range goes up, and I don't plug my car in every day. There's times when I don't have to plug it in for a week or two. In the winter, manufacturers are recommending that you keep your car plugged in just to keep a little bit of a trickle charge going to keep the battery warm. So the series of plug-in hybrids are available that have what's known as gas range extension. So some of the plug-in hybrids have smaller batteries and they have reserve gas tanks. So for instance, Brooke at the top of the hour, he mentioned that he drives a Volt. His Volt has probably about a 50-mile range in the summertime, and then a 250 mile range gas extension. There are cars that have longer ranges in the battery, and they have much smaller 1 or 2 gallon gas range extensions just to get you to a gas station or a home in the event that you need it. So the next thing is, you've also heard people talking about the different kinds of charging. They're known as level 1, 2, and 3 charging, or simply a 3-prong plug, 120 volt charging. That's basically your typical wall outlet. It takes, you're only going to get 4 or 5 miles of charge every hour. A level 2 charge is the most typical charging station that you will see in a home, and it takes a 240 volt connection. The pictures on this slide show you at the top, that's actually a picture of the charging station in my home, which I bought off of Amazon. This is a basically the same as a electric dryer plug, a 240 volt plug. I had an electrician install it, and then I plug my charging station right into it. It runs 32 amps, and I get a full charge easily in 6 or 7 hours, depending on where my battery is. And then this is a picture of the charge port in a Bolt. And you can see that there is sort of this constellation here, and then there's 2 inlets, prongs in the base. A typical level 2 charge would use the top, and level 3 charge, also known as DCFC, or a fast charge station, which is 480 volts, uses the additional ports in order to upsize the amount of electricity that can be powered in. And you can add 90 to 100 miles of range in 30 minutes. It took me 30 minutes to charge at the fast charge station to 75% full. That put me around, somewhere around 200 miles. And somebody asked today what the cost was, and it would have been about $11 to put that amount of power on from that particular outlet. Typically, I also, owners like to see how much energy they're using, and the typical range fluctuates from 4 to 6 miles per kilowatt hour. And then finally, there's something called one pedal driving in the Bolts, which maybe not be called the same thing in other models, but that's where you can actually put your car in a mode that harvests the power from decelerating. And so that means owners don't go from the accelerator to the brake to the accelerator to the brake as you do in a normal internal combustion engine, but actually when you back off your foot on the accelerator, the car automatically starts to decelerate to the point where you don't really need to use the brakes. And that's sometimes an issue because you need to run your brakes every once in a while to prevent rust buildup on them. The earlier charges that maintenance is really limited in and almost evaporates in an electric vehicle is really true. Okay, so moving on. Okay, so we want to move into the Q&A now. So I think that Allison's going to ask questions, and David, you're going to take point on answering the questions.
Great, thanks so much, and thanks for everybody's questions. I think you guys have the opportunity at the end to also wrap up any things that have been said throughout the whole day that we want to make sure are covered. One thing that's come up throughout the conversations today is really looking at what are the ecological impacts of EVs. While we may know that they're better than some of the gasoline alternatives, can you speak a little bit about, are EVs any greener than gasoline-based cars? And what are some of the impacts in terms of manufacturing and mining that folks might need to know about in terms of the overall ecological impact of EVs?
Yes, I can take that. Lois, you want to close out your screen?
Sure. Oh, I'm gonna unshare my screen for a minute, okay?
All right, while you're doing that, let me answer them. Yeah, there are environmental impacts, mainly in the mining and extraction of the minerals that are used for the battery. Mark addressed that previously. I guess what the main thing that comes up is there's this study that says after a certain amount of years, it's less environmental impact with an internal combustion engine than an electric vehicle. And that the original studies on it were exaggerated, I guess. The more recent ones that have been peer reviewed are more like 6 months to a year that it takes before those initial environmental impacts get amortized. But after that period, then every mile, it's like zero impact compared to what you have with an internal combustion engine. Where, so in a way, you can think of it as your electric car is it's getting greener every day. Every day you use it's getting greener, and also the resources that are used in the generation is getting greener over time too. Because right now Illinois has, I think it's like 30% of our, or at least in this area, 30% of our energy is still coal. So, but electric energy, electric mobility is so much more efficient that there's not much wasted compared to internal combustion engine. Next question.
Great, thanks. Are there any concerns about that batteries don't last very long or that they'll eventually end up in landfills as well?
The batteries, the NTS, there's a government agency requires, I can't recall which one it is, a warranty on batteries, and it's 100,000 miles or 8 years. I believe that's what it is. And some manufacturers guarantee longer, have longer warranties. Now, if you look at in practice what's happened, if you go, there's a lot of apps that run on electric vehicles that they track the exact amount of charge that people have. And you can look at it on social media, like there's a Teslafy is one that has that. And it looks like batteries last about 300,000 miles on average. Now, that's not to say that every one of them will. But not only that, but Mark also mentioned the lithium iron phosphate batteries. Those are said to last 1 million miles. They originally, when they came out with them, they were using that phrase, but they sort of held back on it. But those are supposed to last much longer than the life of the car. And you can buy those now, and about half of the, I believe half of the cars in the world right now are using lithium iron phosphate. We still use it more, we're in the US, more oriented to performance cars. So they're still using the nickel, manganese, cobalt batteries, because they also have longer range too. But if you get the lower range cars, and they might not have as good as performance, they use lithium iron phosphate. And then the other aspect of that, when you talk about environmental, is the social aspect. You hear about cobalt, that the mining of it, there's ethical issues of child labor and so forth used on that. Lithium iron phosphate use no cobalt. So if that's a concern of yours, you can always make sure when you buy a car, just make sure it's lithium iron phosphate instead of one of the others. I mean, there's other approaches done that every manufacturer does also have their goals to remove the cobalt completely from the batteries, but they're not yet. But they've been decreased them dramatically by about 10-fold so far. It's expensive, so they want to reduce it.
Thanks so much. We've had some questions come up today about the pros and cons of having a hybrid car versus a full electric car. Can you speak a little bit to some of the pros and cons of the two different models?
Well, I'm a big battery advocate. So I definitely say the battery is a better way to go. Now, some of the issues with the plug-in hybrid is that the estimate that from what the recent studies are saying, the estimates for the EPA that how much people really plug it in, it's in reality doesn't show it to be that way. So it's not quite as environmentally positive as thought. Now, if you look at that MPGE, you look at that miles per gallon estimated, in reality, that makes it much less. At least the recent studies show. So in my opinion, I'm a user since 2018, and there's so many positives to it that I would advocate going with a battery electric vehicle if you can afford it, which that's a big, long issue too.
Well, why don't we jump into that one now, David, since that is another question. So Can you talk a little bit about some of the costs? You've been talking about environmental costs, but what about pocketbooks? Are EVs too expensive? And are there ways that when you look at the overall cost, what should people be looking at?
Right. Right now, the upfront cost is more expensive than a comparable internal combustion engine. However, that's not because how some people say, well, it'll always be that way because it's for whatever reason, because batteries are too expensive. It's not, or whatever. In reality, an electric car is much simpler. It has 1/3 the parts in internal combustion engine. Not only that, but much fewer of the moving parts, which are the critical pieces. So by definition, there's nothing, by definition in physics, it should be cheaper, but you have to pay for that initial investment to change over. And the prices won't really come down until you ramp up and get an economy of scale. And that's what's now happening. So some companies are making huge margins off it because people are demanding more. So why would they lower the price right now? Because they just can't keep up with the supply. But the supply's getting there. It's getting close. And these just passed, like this past month, many of the electric companies, EV companies have lowered their prices, and it will be cheaper from purchase and not far from now. But if you also then talk about the cost of ownership, generally they say about an 8-year period, it equals out. So if you keep your car for 8 years, yes, it will probably be more expensive up front, but after 8 years, you're going to be saving money on it. But not far from now, it will be cheaper. But I got to tell you, being an EV advocate, I would still say don't wait, because you could be thinking, well, I'm going to wait next year, it's going to be cheaper. Wait next year after that. Well, you're not taking advantage of the other benefits of electric mobility.
Great, thank you. And figured into that cost is, do you include the cost of oil changes to your EV in there? I know that some folks still, there's conceptions of, well, I still have to take my car in for the general servicing and oil changes, or is that off the table?
No, there's no oil changes. The only service you have is you have to replace you have to replace your 12-volt battery at a certain point in time, just like you do with your regular car. You have to fill your washer fluid. You have to replace tires. But other than that, there's some of the EVs still require like periodic maintenance checks. And if you heard earlier, Brian was saying they do a 6-month for their fleet. I don't see why you really need to, and some of them don't require anything. There is no maintenance on it. No maintenance costs.
Thank you. And you talked about now being a good time to do this, to purchase an EV if you're able. What about for folks who are concerned that they won't be practical without the fully established infrastructure of public charging stations?
Well, right now, Illinois said there was 88% of the people that have EVs charge from home. And I've read others where it's up to 95%. So your infrastructure is at home. And the first year we had our 2018 electric vehicle, we had it plugged in the wall outlet, just like a toaster. And we were able to do it just fine. It's nice to have a level 2 charger that, those could cost maybe $1,000 to have it installed for you, but you don't have to. And even in our case, if we had the luxury of going to a supercharger for road trips, but that's the only time where you really need the infrastructure. And I got to tell you, at least our experience, and we have a Tesla, and they set that out early. They realized that was going to be an issue. So it is complete. It works perfectly when you're going on road trips. So they have the issue solved, at least if they have a Tesla, and they've put it in place. So others should be able to do it. Look like Electrify America was there about a year ago, but they're having some maintenance issues right now. But now with the government coming in, building up that infrastructure should help others that aren't Teslas. And not only that, but Tesla has always wanted to, or at least they've indicated that they wanted others to be able to use that charging system too. And they were using that in Europe, and they plan on doing it in the US. It just seems like it's taken a long time to open it up for others. I don't know if that answered that.
That's very helpful, and something that's come up more than once today. And it was touched on a little bit during Brian's presentation, but there's some concerns around how EVs work during different weather and how safe are they? So some people say, well, can you charge an EV when it's raining? Or do EVs have heat? Or that they've heard that they get stuck in the snow more easily. Can you speak to EV ownership in the Midwestern climate?
Yes, it's there is a degradation on mileage. And I think one of the reasons why you notice it more, because it's right in your face, because they tell you how much, right when you get in the car, how much it goes down. You do also get that with internal combustion engine, but you just tend not to notice it. At least that's my experience on it. The newer cars, the newer EVs, if you're really concerned about the temperature degradation, would be look for one which has a heat pump, because that's 3 times more efficient when it comes to producing the heat. And that heat could be the thing that takes the most from your range. The other aspect is if you have the luxury of charging at home, you just leave it plugged in, because that'll keep the battery warm. Or because the battery management system, even when the car is sitting there, it warms the battery up because it can't get down to a certain temperature. So it keeps the battery warm, so it uses the battery for the heating system to heat up the battery. So if you plug it into your charger, it won't have to use the battery to do that. It can draw that directly from the grid. So if you have the luxury of plugging in, that's why I was asking earlier about the apartments having charging stations, because I think apartments really need that, because then they can take advantage of that. So if you have it plugged in at night, there's really no impact per se on a lot of this issue. If you have it sitting out in a parking lot for 3 days and it's not plugged in, it sort of goes in this hibernation mode, and it'll take a while to warm up, and you're going to take up more range. But we've had no problems with it.
Great, thank you. So one question, I know Lois mentioned the one pedal driving option, and there's some people have had the concept of they might be hard to learn how to drive, especially maybe for older drivers. Can you speak a little bit about what it's like to drive an ICE car versus an EV, and if there's a learning curve or not?
Well, whenever I give someone a test drive in my car, once you get an electric car, you have to be an ambassador for it. First thing I mentioned to him is the one pedal, that it's like going into low gear if someone's used a stick shift before. And I always think it's going to be an issue, but it's amazing how quickly people pick that up quickly. My 95-year-old dad, right away, no problem. So that you can turn off if you want to, but then you don't get the efficiency. So everyone chooses, and it's actually much more convenient using one pedal. It's nice not having to hit the brake. What was the other part of the question, Allison?
Just making sure, I mean, part of the question, I was trying to say it nicely, but for older drivers, is it possible? And like you said, if your 95-year-old dad can do it, I feel pretty good about that. Right.
There's there is more technology, like in our Tesla, there's more technology there. They really, moved into higher tech on it, but you don't have to use the stuff. All you have to know is how to turn the wheel and the gas. You don't have to use all that other stuff. And there is a brake if you're afraid of using one pedal, you still have the brake. It's really in a way just for emergencies, but it's still there. So it can be intimidating though, I think, for a lot of elderly, but it really doesn't have to be. I'm elderly, right? I'm senior, so.
Great, thanks so much. So one question, we've talked a lot about impacts to pocketbooks, impact to the environment. What about impact on jobs when the car industry has been so central to a lot of US economy? I'm curious if you could talk a little bit about what does it look like to manufacture an EV versus an ICE car? And what does this mean for jobs down the line?
Well, that is a challenge because, as I was saying before, there's a third of the parts, or 30% fewer parts, not third, but 33% of the parts. So that means there's fewer parts need to be made, so there's fewer jobs. So, and not only that, but they're shifting. So instead of there's going to be no need for internal combustion engines. You got electric motors, are simpler to build. So yes, there will be an impact on that. And I think that's where the government needs to come into play and see about helping the auto industry shift so that they can retrain workers, or just, well, since this is not like turned on right now, oftentimes people are afraid, oh my gosh, it's gonna be turned on right now. We got several years for this adjustment to happen. So over attrition and just, we have shortage of labor right now anyway. So some of that will naturally be handled. But that's out of my wheelhouse. I can't really do anything about that. That's something that you'd hope our government agencies would work with.
Great, thank you. So talking a little bit, you've talked a little bit about how long batteries last, but there's a few questions here about what is the replacement cost for batteries and also the resale value for EVs for folks who are considering the investment upfront.
Right, the EV resale value is higher right now. Now, in the early days, it was lower. And then people said it was because it was new technology and it would go obsolete pretty quick. It was the argument at the time. But now they're higher. They hold their resale value longer. What was the other part of the question? That's my senior part.
Sorry. So what about if you have to replace a battery? What's
replacement,
the cost
right.
to replace a battery?
Okay, yeah, and everyone's probably heard where someone blew up their Tesla because it was going to cost them $20,000 to replace their battery. When you're talking about a 2010 Tesla, it would cost $20,000 for the battery. And sure enough, they're sitting in the warehouse. They're not going to sell it for less than they made it. So yes, that car was $100,000. Now it's more like $3,500, $4,000 for the battery. But in a way, it's like, do you plan on rebuilding your engine? It's like, I understand why people think that, because they're thinking of their phone battery. You plug it in every while, it doesn't seem to last. But the phone battery doesn't have the battery management system like a car. And it has a cooling system that manages that battery, making sure it lasts as long as possible. So the odds are the battery will outlast the cars. And that's what it seems to be happening. And now getting back to, I think, the other question about recycling batteries and so forth. I think it's sort of misleading sometimes because there's some states say, well, they haven't recycled many. But you look at the recycle companies and they say it's because no one's giving us the batteries because people are repurposing them. You go out there, if the battery's not been damaged, but it's lost the charge that makes it viable in a car, it's still viable in stationary storage. And there's a lot of, if you go out on eBay or whatever, they're looking for these batteries to be repurposed. So they're being repurposed before they're being recycled. So if you ask the companies that recycle, like Redwood Technologies, they're over the 90% level of recycling those materials. I think that's a better number to go by. And so, but if you have no batteries to recycle, you're not recycling.
Thank you so much.
David, wow. That's a lot. Thank you. It's a lot of good information. We're going to go ahead and wrap things up here and call it a day. So first thing I want to do is I want to thank all of our speakers and panelists. I want to thank all of the folks who joined us today. We still have 191 people still with us. Thank you so much. I know it was a long morning. I also want to thank our sponsors, DuPage County and the Cool DuPage program, DuPage Foundation, Christopher B. Burke Engineering, Itasca Bank and Trust, Bedrock Earthscapes, and also want to thank ComEd again for their support. So thanks everyone for joining us. I would encourage you to visit our website, theconservationfoundation.org. There's a lot of information on there about a variety of conservation topics, a lot of events and activities coming up that you can participate in. And if you're not a member of the Conservation Foundation, please consider becoming a member and supporting our work throughout the territory and our region here. You all have a great day. Thank you all. And you should all be receiving an email sometime next week with a link to the video and a link to the presentations and other pertinent information. So thanks again, and thanks to the A team of Allison, Abby, and Amy for all of your back room and technical support today. All right, bye-bye. Sheila, did you want to stay on, and Joy?
Yeah, I think Joy wants to get a picture.
Yes, please. Sorry, I'm gonna try it from my desktop, though when I snipped it from the laptop, it just was a bad picture. I won't bother sharing it with you, Sheila, because it did not go well.
Oh, and I have many pictures of